I'm the highest civilization in the universe. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 526. Buck. Buck was already waiting on Bishop Star. Although he received Boucher's warning, he didn't care. But as Buck's deputy, Nelly showed a worried look and said, "Since Boucher has issued a warning, why don't we prevent them from landing first?" Buck waved his hand disdainfully and replied, "There's nothing to worry about. I fought hard to get the decomposition of the heavenly branch flower from the general. How powerful can two wild beasts be? Are we going to hand over the decomposition of the heavenly branch flower to others for this reason?" Nelly nodded slightly after hearing this, hesitated for a moment, and replied, "What does Boucher's warning mean?" Buck shook his head slightly and did not reply directly. Instead, he sighed and said, "Nelly, you have to think about this more. It's not enough to just fight. This Boucher can bring the heavenly branch flower from Kabu Star to the base warehouse, and now he can bring it to our Bishop Star. If it is really a dangerous wild beast, this heavenly branch flower cannot be taken away from Kabu Star." Nelly seemed to think of something after hearing this, but he just nodded slightly and didn't say anything more. Buck then said fiercely, "Order Boucher to land directly at the decomposition base." "Yes." Nelly responded and turned to leave. At this time, in the spaceship, Boucher was standing carefully in front of the operating table, and the light on the operating table flashed, and a message was transmitted. "Decomposition base?" Boucher whispered, raised his hand, and tapped the operating table to determine the transmission location. But at this moment, a sentence suddenly came from behind Boucher. "Where is the decomposition base? What is it used for?" Moore and the fox beast appeared behind him at some point. The sudden appearance of the two guys startled Boucher, and he shouted "Ah!" and couldn't help shrinking back slightly. He looked at Moore and the fox beast with his eyes, hesitating and didn't know how to answer. At this time, Moore seemed to notice a little bit of abnormality. His eyes turned slightly and looked at the operating table. The surface of his body flashed red, and a halo followed and entered the operating table. Through his own mental power, Moore had already noticed something, and his face immediately became solemn. He opened his mouth and said viciously, "You are not taking me to a fun place, you guy. Brother Fox, kill him." The fox beast suddenly took 2 steps forward and looked like he was going to take action. Boucher was shocked and waved his hands quickly, saying, "Wait, there is indeed a fun place there. I didn't lie to you. You will know when you get there. Besides, it is space now. If we take action, we may all die." Moore looked at the other party coldly and flew to the operating table. At this time, the operating table had already determined the transmission location, the decomposition base of Bishop Star. Moore raised his hand and changed the transmission location to the prosperous construction area of Bishop Star, and said to himself, "Such a desolate place must be boring. There are many buildings here. We should go here." After changing the transmission location, Moore said with satisfaction, "Okay, let's take a look first. If there is nothing fun, Brother Fox, you can kill him." Boucher looked at the two wild beasts with a sad face and helpless face. At this moment, Li Ming on the planet Cape slowly opened his eyes and gently removed his left hand from his chest. The wound had completely recovered, and the injury was basically healed. Li Ming's complexion was also much better. He slowly stood up, glanced at Walker, and said, "Let's go and save Moore." After recovering from his injuries, combined with the consciousness information of the alien just now, and with the astronomical map, Li Ming already knew some key information. The headquarters of the Timmins Galaxy is located on the planet Bellica, which is the inner system of the Timmins Galaxy. Since it is confirmed that Moore's disappearance is related to the Timmins Galaxy, Li Ming's first destination is Bellica. Entering the main cabin of the spacecraft, Li Ming raised his hand and took out an item, which was the astronomical map. He came to the operating table and put the item in his hand on the edge of the operating table. Suddenly, a blue light flashed, and the information in the astronomical map entered the operating table little by little. At this time, the galaxy distribution and safety coordinates of the Timmins Galaxy were presented one by one on the operating table. Li Ming raised his hand and pointed, confirming his goal, the headquarters of the Timmins Galaxy, Bellica. However, at this time on Bishop, a spaceship was slowly landing above the construction area. This scene also appeared on the control panel of another base. Buck looked at the landing position of the spaceship and became furious. He shouted, "This Boucher dared to disobey my order." Nelly looked at the control panel with a look of thinking, but before he could say anything, Buck turned around angrily and said, "You wait here, I'll go and see." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and walked away quickly. Nelly wanted to say something to stop him, but it was too late. In the spaceship above the construction area, Moore looked at the buildings below and the aliens walking back and forth from the control panel. After shaking his head slightly, he said, "It seems that you are deliberately deceiving me." As he spoke, his cold eyes looked at Boucher. Boucher was stunned and didn't know what to do. From the control panel, the construction area below was ordinary. In addition to the fixed buildings, there were bustling aliens. Although the buildings were dense and there were many people, it was particularly quiet. It was not as lively as Moore imagined, so Moore was very disappointed. Boucher's eyes rolled around. He was in a dilemma. After thinking for a while, he suddenly flashed and ran directly to a portal next to the main cabin. After passing through the portal, Boucher ran quickly along the corridor, intending to escape. Seeing this, Moore gnashed his teeth in anger and said, "Brother, let's go and kill him." While speaking, Moore lightly tapped on the operating table and saw a blue light flashing, and a beam of light shot out from the bottom of the spacecraft. Moore sat proudly on the fox beast's body and looked around. Just a casual glance, he immediately found Boucher's position. Boucher, who had left the spacecraft, was desperately flying away. After locking the target, the fox beast's figure flashed and shot out. As it flew, one of the 7 tails of the fox beast suddenly flashed yellow, and then the whole body turned yellow. With a flash of light, a click sound of thunder and lightning, the fox beast's body disappeared on the spot. Although the fox beast is very fast, Boucher is also a person who has teleportation, and its escape speed is also very fast. There was a reason why Boucher chose to escape here. It was not impossible for Boucher to escape when he was in the base warehouse, but the base warehouse might be in trouble. After all, it was the warehouse of the Timmins Galaxy, not that of any single civilization. If an accident happened, Boucher would be blamed. But the situation is different now. This is Bishop Star, the nest of the Onan civilization, which has nothing to do with Boucher. The most important thing is that Boucher has informed Buck of the danger of Moore and the fox beast, so as long as he escapes successfully, all the responsibilities will have nothing to do with him. For these reasons, Boucher fled to a distance. But how could Moore let the other party go like this? He gritted his teeth and said, "This guy dared to lie to me. I must kill him this time." That being said, it is very difficult to catch up with the other party at the moment. Being able to keep a certain distance from the other party is already the limit of the fox beast. After a chase, the fox beast suddenly said, "This guy seems to have the same teleportation ability as the master. If we continue to chase him, we will only consume energy and will not be able to catch up." Moore was furious and continued to roar, "No, we must catch up with him. I want to kill him." As he was talking, a spaceship suddenly flew in from the distance of the sky. The spaceship first stopped above Boucher's head. Seeing this, the fox beast also stopped quickly. Looking into the distance, he saw a blue light flashing at the bottom of the spaceship, and an alien fell from it. Then the alien and Boucher began to talk. The distance was too far, and he had no idea what the other party was talking about. But a few seconds later, the two turned around and came here together. The person who came down from the spaceship was Buck. The two flew towards Moore and continued to talk. "No matter what, you are a 1.7 level civilization, only 1 level lower than me. How could you be chased by 2 wild beasts?" Buck said disdainfully. Boucher lowered his head slightly, hesitated for a moment, and said, "These 2 wild beasts are extraordinary, so we still have to be careful when dealing with them." HMPH. Buck snorted coldly. Chapter 527, Fox Beast Attack. "Bouch, I think you are scared out of your wits. I want to see how powerful the wild beast is that can make you run away in panic." As he said this, Buck and Boucher had already come to a distance of 100 meters from Moore. The fox beast turned his eyes left and right, looking at Boucher and Buck, but he didn't seem to care, but Moore shrank in fear and said, "Another one is coming. Brother Moore, don't worry, I'm here." The fox beast then replied firmly. Moore looked at the fox beast under him, smiled with satisfaction, and then looked at Buck and said, "You want to stand up for him, right?" Humph. Buck slowly raised his right hand, and a ball of water beads surged out of his palm. The water beads squirmed a little bit, gradually forming a double-edged axe, a grey-blue double-edged axe, with blue light flashing on the surface, and there were chains wrapped around the surface of the axe. "It's not standing up, it's killing you too." Buck smiled lightly, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. Moore snorted disdainfully and said, "Brother Fox, kill him." "Okay." The fox beast's body tensed up and immediately entered a fighting state, with its 7 tails fluttering. But the fox beast's eyes were fixed on the double-edged axe, and it said to itself, "It's a weapon of water attribute, so you size to resist it." The blue tail among the 7 tails lit up, and the whole body of the fox beast began to turn blue. Without waiting for the fox beast to make a move, Buck flew over, raised the double-edged axe in his hand high, and chopped it directly at the fox beast's head. Seeing the opponent rushing over aggressively, Moore exclaimed "Ah," and the fox beast dodged and successfully avoided the attack. After missing the attack, Buck glanced coldly, swung the axe horizontally, and a swish sound was heard. The axe blade flashed, and a column of water swept over like a water dragon. The water column was more than 10 meters wide, with a big mouth at the top. It was moving at an incredibly fast speed. As soon as the ears heard the sound of water flow, the water column was approaching in front of them, and its big mouth opened, as if it was going to swallow the fox beast and more. Looking at the water column with its mouth open, it was like a huge waterfall falling from the sky. Moore panicked, but at this time, the fox beast's eyes widened, its mouth opened, and it recognized a ball of blue flame. The flame went directly into the mouth of the water dragon. With a bang, the blue flame exploded directly, and the entire water dragon turned into an ice dragon. Buck was stunned when he saw this. His face was slightly solemn, and his eyes quickly locked on the fox beast's tail. At this time, Boucher slowly flew to Buck's side and whispered, "The 7-tailed beast has 7 elemental attributes, which is extremely powerful. Moreover, it can switch the attributes of its own energy according to the battle situation. It is very tricky." Buck glanced at Boucher beside him, and his eyes returned to the fox beast. "So it's a mutated monster." As he said this, Buck had become cautious. He looked at Boucher beside him and said, "You brought back this kind of monster from K-Booster. Why didn't you report to the general?" Boucher seemed to know that the other party would ask this question, and immediately said, "The Cheyenne's hair is in the hands of that bird. I thought it was just an ordinary wild beast. When I returned to the warehouse base, I found that something was wrong. With these 2 guys around me, I didn't have the chance to report at all." Buck snorted coldly and didn't ask any more questions, but his expression was very serious. He said, "I'll hold them back first. You contact the general at the headquarters first." Boucher didn't move. After hesitating for a while, he replied, "Instead of me contacting the general, you might as well talk to the general in person. I don't have any say in this kind of thing." He said so, but in the end, in order to shirk responsibility, Buck looked at the 2 beasts in front of him, and said to himself, "Since it is a mutated monster in the 3rd interval, the general still needs to step in." Thinking this way, Buck had already made a decision and said, "Then you go and inform Anelli, and ask him to convey the situation here on my behalf. I beg the general to come." After hearing this, Boucher showed a satisfied look and said, "Okay, I'll do it right away." As soon as he finished speaking, Boucher turned around and was about to fly away, but this move was immediately noticed by the fox beast, which opened its mouth and sprayed in Boucher's direction, and a ball of blue flame flew out. Buck saw this and swung the giant axe in his hand again. The axe blade flashed, and another water dragon swept out from the axe blade. Bang! The water column and the blue flame collided with each other, and the water dragon turned into an ice dragon again, but it resisted the attack of the fox beast. Watching Boucher leave, Moore gritted his teeth and stamped his feet in anger, and said to himself viciously, "I actually let that guy get away." The fox beast was relatively calm, and immediately looked at Buck, thinking, "The energy in my body is running low. The previous battle consumption has not been replenished. After I get rid of this guy, I must have a good rest for a while. Moore's anger turned from Boucher to Buck, and he shouted angrily, "Brother Fox, kill this troublemaker." The fox beast's eyes narrowed, and then said, "That's what I meant." Buck looked at the two beasts in front of him, and did not attack immediately. Instead, his body slowly descended to the ground, his eyes never leaving the two beasts opposite, and whispered, "Fighting in the air is still too disadvantageous for me. If I can return to the ground, it will be very beneficial to me." Thinking of this, the speed of his body's descent increased little by little. The fox beast didn't care, and moved, swooped down, and went straight to Buck. Before his feet touched the ground, the fox beast was already approaching. Buck did not dare to neglect it. He waved his right hand and the double-edged axe in his hand flew out, but the chain on the double-edged axe remained on Buck's arm, like a fish hook being thrown out. Facing the oncoming weapon, the fox beast flipped over and jumped onto the axe, then ran towards Buck along the chain. Buck seemed to have expected this. He tightly grasped the chain with his right hand, and a swish sound was heard, and the entire chain immediately released a flowing water column. The fox beast, who was running on the chain, had not yet reacted when the water flow had already wrapped it up. The water flow was in a vortex shape, and the chain was the center of the vortex. The water flow surrounded the chain like a coat and kept rotating. The fox beast did not care. A blue light flashed on its body, and its entire body was wrapped in blue flames. The rotating water flow turned into ice before it could take effect. Although the vortex of water flow was turbulent, everything the fox beast passed by was frozen. After a quick run, it had already come close to Buck, and the front claw quickly raised up to hit Buck. Buck was not panicked at all. He shook the chain tightly in his hand, and a muffled bang sound was heard. The water that had been frozen before all shattered, and the chain in his hand quickly spun and flew. This startled the fox beast. Originally, he had already approached the opponent, and one strike was bound to hit, but who knew that before he got close, circles of chains had already appeared in front of him. It was like a loose rope, although it was constantly turning, it was impossible to pass directly. HMPH. Buck said a cold voice, and his right hand pulled hard again. The loose chain suddenly tightened, and the sound of swish 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 was heard continuously, and the fox beast's body was actually directly entangled. The loose chains just now did not show any abnormality, but it was unexpected that once tightened, it actually bound its body tightly, and even more was fixed to the back of the fox beast by the chain. Buck saw this and whispered, "Sure enough, close combat is the disadvantage of the element." As he said this, the double-edged axe that was thrown out earlier was pulled back by the chain and fell directly from a high altitude, with the axe blade pointing downwards, heading towards the fox beast and Moore. Moore was shocked and shouted in a panic, "Brother Fox, what are you doing? Are we going to die?" At this critical moment, the fox beast's eyes suddenly widened a little, and the energy in its body burst out. The 7 tails grew and extended rapidly like 7 tentacles. The black and white tails stretched directly towards Buck in the distance. The white tail was jumping with Ox, and the black tail was entangled with shadows, which looked extremely weird. In addition, a yellow tail went straight up to the sky. Before the double-edged axe landed, it wrapped around the handle of the double-edged axe, just like a hand holding the handle tightly. Chapter 528. The general arrives in person. Buck's face changed slightly, and he quickly turned to avoid the attack. All the attacks of the black and white tails missed, and Buck also turned over and fell to the ground. The fox beast also fell to the ground, but the chain on his body did not loosen at all, and the other end of the chain was still in Buck's hand. "As long as the chain is still in my hand, this guy can't break free," Buck said coldly. His eyes were already fixed on the fox beast's actions. The fox beast's body was tightly bound, and Mer behind him was struggling weakly, saying, "I can't move." "I know, Brother Mer." As he spoke, the fox beast was already thinking about something, and his eyes turned to look at the chain, and then looked at Buck in the distance, as if he had thought of something. Swoosh! The black tail suddenly extended again, and rushed straight towards Buck, and at the same time, the yellow tail holding the double-edged axe suddenly flashed. Noticing the attack of the blacktail, Buck leaped away easily and naturally, but the next moment, the yellow tail in the sky suddenly crackled, and a powerful lightning force was released from it. The lightning was transmitted along the chain to Buck's hand. This was exactly what Buck ignored. He only felt a sharp pain in his body, and a strong current flowed through his body, as if it was about to tear his flesh apart at any time. Buck gritted his teeth, and tried his best to activate energy to resist, but the current had already entered his body, and this resistance was somewhat futile at this moment. Bang! A muffled sound was heard, and the lightning flashed. Buck's body rolled, and was extended more than 10 meters away. As for the chain in his hand, it was completely loosened. The chain that was out of his hand immediately lost control, and the chain wrapped around the fox beast also loosened and scattered little by little, and the fox beast also regained their freedom. Buck frowned, looked at the fox beast, and turned to the sky little by little, only to see that the golden tail was still holding the double-edged axe. "It's really hard to deal with," Buck whispered, and looked at the fox beast with more caution. The fox beast had little energy left, so it had to use it carefully, but it was still unrealistic to kill the person in front of it quickly. After all, the opponent's strength was not weak. While they were fighting, in the starry sky, there was a flash of lightning in an airspace, and a giant disc-shaped spaceship suddenly appeared, which was transmitted from a distance. In the main cabin of the spaceship were the general and House. In front of the console, the general looked at the remaining safe coordinates and said, "We are very close to Bishop Star. We need to deal with this matter quickly, because I have to rush to the Boreas galaxy to run for candidate." House nodded repeatedly, looking at the console, and replied, "Allison and I can handle this matter." Buck insisted that you go in person. "I'm really worried that you will miss the time to participate in the election." The general raised his hand slightly and said, "The election is the first priority. There is still some time now, so there is no rush. Besides, I have prepared enough, so there will be no problem." After saying this, the general looked at the console again, ready to carry out the next transmission operation, but at this moment, there was a sudden burst sound in this airspace again, and another Silver H-type spaceship was teleported here. As soon as the new spaceship appeared, the general's outstretched hand was immediately retracted, and his eyes looked at the light spot on the console with a frown. House also noticed something strange, looked at the light spot that just appeared, and looked at the general again. The general pointed at the light spot, and the console flashed blue light. The original light spot turned into a spaceship pattern under the interweaving of blue light. It was the H-shaped pattern of the ship that had just been transmitted, but here, the appearance was silver, and the overall appearance was different. At this moment, the H-shaped spaceship was displayed on the console in the form of a phantom pattern, which could be viewed from all angles. The general was fascinated by it, as if he remembered something, and House on the side also rolled his eyes and frowned slightly. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly shouted "R" and said, This spaceship seems to be a spaceship from the Boreas galaxy." The general was awakened from his dream after hearing this, as if something was revealed to him. After nodding slightly, he said, "That's right, it's a spaceship." There was a look of surprise in the eyes of both of them. After all, the spaceship was developed by the second-level civilization in the Boreas galaxy himself, and it was once shown to the commanders and generals of the surrounding satellite star systems, but that was a long time ago, and no one has seen it since then. The sudden appearance at this moment shocked the general and House. Could it be Lord Flowers? House suddenly spoke up, as if he had thought of something. This sentence seemed to remind the general, and the general immediately fell into deep thought and lightly tapped on the console to send a message. Looking at the general's operation, House asked in confusion, "What does the general mean by this?" The general smiled and replied, "No matter who is in this spaceship, let's connect and communicate first. After all, we still have to go to the Boreas galaxy in the future. If it is Lord Flowers, it would be even better." As he said this, a light suddenly flashed on the console, and the spaceship actually responded. After seeing the reply, the general was overjoyed and said, "The other party agreed to connect, and invited me to the ship for an interview." House nodded again and said, "It seems that this is not just an ordinary encounter, but an opportunity." The general smiled slightly, suddenly turned around and said, "Docking with the other party's spaceship immediately." In space, the two spaceships began to approach slowly. The space-time spaceship was relatively small, and the docking method of the two spaceships also became up-down docking. That is, the space-time spaceship came to the top, and the general spaceship came to the bottom, to dock in an overlapping manner. After the two spaceships overlapped, the bottom of the space-time spaceship suddenly flashed with light, and a blue beam of light shot onto the spaceship below. The beam of light passed through the hull and directly entered the main cabin. The general took a look at the beam of light, and then said, "House, you wait here, I'll be back soon." House nodded and replied, "Yes." After saying this, the general directly entered the blue beam of light, and the blue light suddenly flashed again, and the general's figure disappeared with a buzz. Seeing the general disappear, House was actually a little excited at this moment. He began to pace back and forth in front of the console, thinking to himself, if the general can win the election and become the next successor, then I will have the opportunity to strive to become the commander of the Timmins galaxy. Thinking this in his mind, a smug smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. The general was gone for half a day, and House could only wait anxiously in front of the console, because the result of the general's trip was crucial to the general's succession election. When House was anxious, a flash of light suddenly appeared in the blue light, and the general's figure had appeared. As soon as he saw the general, House immediately came up and said, "How is it, General?" The general smiled lightly and replied, "You don't need to ask more about this. Let's solve the current problem first." As soon as the voice fell, the general raised his hand and tapped the console and continued to transmit. Although House was full of curiosity, he didn't dare to ask more when he heard the general say that, but seeing the smile on the general's face, he could guess that the result of the general's trip must be good. The spaceship began to continue transmitting. House looked at the control panel again. The spaceship was still connected to his own spaceship, and he could not help but feel a little puzzled. House did not dare to ask more questions, but he was curious and puzzled. The general naturally saw what House was thinking. After a slight smile, he said, "I might as well tell you that this spaceship has little energy left. Lord Flowers is testing it. He just happened to meet us here. I have communicated with him. After I finish dealing with the matter on Bishop, I will send the spaceship back." After hearing this, House was relieved and nodded and smiled repeatedly. Although he did not meet Flowers directly, being able to help Flowers send the spaceship back was already an opportunity to get close to Flowers, which was naturally a good thing for the election. Therefore, after hearing this, House was also satisfied. But at this moment, the general looked at the control panel with a heavy heart, as if he was still thinking about something. Chapter 529, Beast Alliance. In the starfield, two connected spaceships teleported to the space of Bishop. The general watched quietly in front of the operating table, stretched out his right hand again, tapped it lightly, and then retracted his hand. This time the teleportation point was directly to the destination, a coordinate point on Bishop provided by Buck. On the plains of Bishop, 3 aliens were surrounding the Fox Beast and more. These 3 people were Buck, Anelli and Boucher. Anelli and Boucher were 1.7 level civilizations, and only Buck was 1.8 level civilization, but the Fox Beast and more were also 1.8 level civilizations. With the strength of the Fox Beast, it was naturally not a problem to fight 3 alone, but at this moment the Fox Beast had little energy left. Looking at the 3 people in front of him, he was also willing but unable. Moore had almost no fighting power. Looking at the panting Fox Beast under him, he said, "Brother, you have to hold on, otherwise we will all be finished." The Fox Beast gritted its teeth and looked coldly at the 3 people in the distance. After taking a deep breath, it said, "Brother Moore, don't worry, I will never let them hurt you." As he spoke, Boucher and Anelli on the opposite side suddenly moved and rushed over at the same time. Boucher held a big knife, while Anelli was barehanded, but blue light flashed on his hands, which looked extremely weird. The Fox Beast's eyes widened, and the tail behind it suddenly extended and lengthened, and rushed straight towards the 2. The 7 tails, like 7 tentacles, not only have strong attack power, but also have elemental attributes. Once hit, it will be fatal. Boucher knew the power of the Fox Beast's 7 tails. When he saw the tail attacking, he turned his body and began to dodge. While dodging, he said, "The closer we get to this guy, the more dangerous it is." The general is on the way. We don't have to risk our lives to attack. As long as we can hold him back, it will be enough." These words were naturally said to Anelli. Anelli certainly understood the pros and cons. While dodging, he replied, "Of course I know this." The attacks of the two were mostly feints, which were to consume and hold the fox beast back. The fox beast naturally saw the other party's intentions, but it did not dare to relax at all. Once it really relaxed its vigilance and exposed its flaws, the feints of the two people would inevitably become real attacks. In this way, the two sides changed from a life and death battle to a tug-of-war, and they were in a stalemate. The fox beast and more had no choice at this time. They could not retreat. They could not kill in such a passive state. The funds were very disadvantageous. At this moment, there was a sudden hum sound in the sky, and a spaceship teleported in. The sudden appearance of the spaceship stopped the battle. Boucher looked up at the spaceship, smiled slightly, then stepped back, and jumped into the distance, whispering, "Finally it's here." Anelli also stepped back, and moved far away, but the fox beast looked at the spaceship in the sky with a sad face. Moore also looked at the spaceship in the sky with worry. Could it be that their reinforcement have arrived? This is really over. Moore looked disappointed, and even gave up on his sad face. The bottom of the spaceship flashed with blue light, and two figures slowly fell from it. They were the general and House. The general was a 1.9 level civilization, and House was a 1.8 level civilization. As soon as the two figures appeared, Moore collapsed on the fox beast, crying and saying, "Brother, I hurt you." As he was talking, the general who came down from the spaceship was already walking towards this side. When he came to a dozen meters in front of the fox beast, the general stopped. Facing the general, the fox beast did not dodge, but just looked at him with wide eyes, and Moore stopped crying, and looked up at the general motionlessly, and the two were stunned. Under the general's indifferent expression, he raised his right hand high, with a blue light flashing in his palm. He looked at the two beasts in front of him, and suddenly slapped his right hand. Boom. A loud noise shook his ears, and the earth cracked. Sand and rocks burst out from the ground. The smoke and dust completely covered the entire area, and under the intense energy, the shock wave also spread out. The aliens on the periphery were all stunned, but they raised their hands to resist when the shock wave hit. The figures of the general and the two beasts disappeared in the smoke and dust together. Under the shock wave, they could only feel the power of the energy explosion. After a few seconds, the shock wave stopped, the smoke and dust dissipated, and the fox beast and Moore were no longer visible. Only the general walked out step by step. The general came to House without looking back and said, "Let's go." House had not yet woken up from the general's operation. After standing there for a while, he nodded and replied, "Ah, okay." The two returned to the light column of the spaceship together. With the flashing blue light, the two returned to the spaceship again. Standing in the main cabin, the general stood in front of the operating table and clicked something, and then said, "Now I have to go to the Burrells Galaxy to deliver the spaceship to Lord Flowers. You go back to the headquarters first." As he said this, the main cabin flashed with light, and a blue light column landed directly in the main cabin. The general took 2 steps forward and entered it. Then the light flashed, and the figure disappeared. House looked a little surprised at this scene, but he didn't care too much. The spaceship began to slowly separate. The spaceship disconnected, and took off little by little. At the same time as the spaceship took off, Anelli on the ground suddenly frowned. "This spaceship," he whispered in his mouth, and began to think. During the Galaxy War, it was the appearance of this spaceship that caught Anelli's attention, and Anelli also saw this spaceship enter the K-booster directly through the operating table. It was natural that Anelli was puzzled by its appearance here at this time. At this time, the spaceship in the sky suddenly flashed and disappeared on the spot, and when the spaceship appeared again, it was already in the space of Bishop Star. At this time, in the main cabin of the spaceship, the general slowly came to the operating table, but while walking, his body suddenly twisted and changed, and he changed from the general to Li Ming. Standing in front of the operating table, Li Ming's right hand swung violently, and the cloak behind him shook, and several beams of light shot out, and 5 pet beasts appeared together. Li Ming glanced at the 5 pet beasts, and looked at Moore with dissatisfaction. "Moore, since I met you, have I never really treated you as a pet?" Li Ming said evasively. Moore hesitated for a while and nodded slightly. Li Ming also continued, "Didn't I use my consciousness to force you to do anything?" After hearing this, Moore paused, looked at the people around him, and whispered, "Yes." Li Ming looked unhappy. Just as he was about to say something else, Walker suddenly stood up and said, "Master, it's my fault that Moore got into trouble this time." "Oh." Li Ming turned his eyes and looked at Walker, but didn't say anything else. Walker continued, "When we were on Kabu Star, the master asked Zilum to guard instead of me, obviously asking me to protect Moore. So, the responsibility for Moore's problems is all mine." Hearing this, Li Ming snorted and said, "I don't mean to blame anyone by saying this. I just want to teach Moore a lesson. This kind of thing must never happen again. Fortunately, I encountered it by chance this time, otherwise." Moore slowly lowered his head, as if he realized his mistake, and said nothing. After Li Ming sighed slightly, he turned around and left the main cabin and entered a sub-cabin, but left all the 5 pet beasts in the main cabin. Although he said nothing, this action also made the 5 pets sense Li Ming's displeasure. As soon as Li Ming left, Moore glanced at Walker and said, "Walker, I didn't ask you to help me. You did it voluntarily." Walker ignored him and came to the operating table and said, "I think the master is very disappointed in us. During this period of time, we have all grown in Hingai and Shang, and even our abilities are no longer what they used to be. Now, we should work together to help the master." Walker looked at the operating table and said intently. This speech made the other 4 beasts startled, as if they didn't quite understand. Walker tapped lightly on the operating table, then turned around and said seriously, "It seems that you haven't thought about this matter yet, so, let me tell you." Chapter 530 Absolute Strength. In fact, we all know that what the master needs most now is Liu Tong, and Liu Tong is in the Boris galaxy. We should all know this from the common consciousness between us and the master. Walker said with a solemn expression, as if he had some plan. He continued, "Then, I hope that the 5 of us can work together perfectly to help the master get Liu Tong. Only in this way can our value be reflected." Walker's last sentence seemed to have penetrated the hearts of the other grenades. Among them, Zuolang said, "I agree." The fox beast swung its tail and said, "I agree with Brother Walker's idea." The magic horned golden fungus beast that had been on Walker danced its body and replied lightly, "Agree." Finally, Moore was at a loss, with a bit of reluctance on his face, but still reluctantly replied, "Agree." Walker didn't care and continued, "Then next, I will talk about my personal plan allocation. First." When Walker said this, Moore was already dissatisfied. His expression did not change, and he gritted his teeth and said secretly, "After all, I was the first to follow the master, and I'm also of the bloodline of the Star Beast, but now this dead cat has taken the limelight. No, I must find an opportunity to save my position." Moore seemed to be listening seriously, but he had his own ideas in his heart. These pet beasts discussed with each other, and Li Ming in the auxiliary cabin also had his own plans. After killing the general and obtaining the other party's consciousness, these information made Li Ming have his own ideas. From the general's consciousness, Li Ming understood more clearly how the second level civilization of the Virgo cluster existed. The Virgo cluster and the local group are interrelated. Both belong to the local supercluster, also known as the Virgo supercluster. This is the only galaxy connection between the two, and above this is the civilization connection. In the local supercluster, the emergence of a second level civilization in the area is strictly controlled. The local group is a member of the local supercluster, which is controlled by the Shenmue organization, and prohibits any civilization from reaching the second level civilization without authorization. As a member of the local supercluster, the Virgo cluster is controlled by the Earthbath organization, but the control method is different. The Earthbath organization allows 5 second level civilizations to exist in the cluster and can only maintain a certain number. Once there is an excess of existence, the Earthbath organization will take action. The reason why the Virgo cluster has such a situation is also related to the environmental conditions in the Virgo cluster. In the Virgo cluster, there is a large galaxy called Penelope, which has many death planets. The so-called death planets are planets controlled by the Beastmen and Zerg. There are also civilizations in the Penelope galaxy, but most of the starfields are controlled by death planets, and there are also a lot of resources on these death planets, which makes the beasts and insects on the death planets sometimes attack the civilized creatures of other large galaxies. Therefore, the existence of the second level civilization is to suppress the insects and beasts on the death planets. The 5 second level civilizations in the Virgo galaxy cluster are located in the 5 largest galaxies, each in charge of one side. The system of the second level civilization is inherited, that is, once a second level civilization dies or withdraws, it will be necessary to find the next successor of the second level civilization through elections. Death can be understood, but withdrawal is different. The so-called withdrawal is to enter the Earth-Bath Organization, the Cheyenne Organization, or other galaxy cluster management organizations. Simply put, the Cheyenne organization of this galaxy group caused the death of its members for some reason, and at this time, the supplement needs to be recruited by itself, or selected from the withdrawn personnel. The Burrell's galaxy is one of the 5 large galaxies in the Virgo galaxy cluster. Flowers, a second level civilization in this galaxy, is planning to withdraw, so he launched an election. In addition to the Boral's galaxy, there are also nearby satellite galaxies participating in the election. The election is used to determine the next candidate for the second level civilization. As for how to select, the general's consciousness does not have it, so Li Ming naturally has no way of knowing, but this is also an opportunity for Li Ming. After all, Li Ming's current plan is to transform into the general's appearance, to find a possible opportunity to obtain LIU. All this information was obtained by Li Ming from the general's consciousness. For now, this is the best method. With these ideas, Li Ming closed his eyes and began to practice. Li Ming now spends most of his time studying potential and limits, promoting the perfect combination of civilization and star nationality, which is the fastest way to improve strength. In addition, Li Ming is also dealing with an important matter, that is, the vast universe magic weapon Kanjiui. The vast universe magic weapon and the divine weapon are both rare and powerful personal weapons. How strong they can be depends on the user's civilization level, civilization background, and energy volume and other comprehensive element. There are different levels of Heiau artifacts, so there are 12 lists of Heiau artifacts to support them. Li Ming's Niteng is only ranked 11th, but the Hanshao magic weapon is different. There is no ranking of magic weapons, only the corresponding mechanism of civilization. As for how powerful it is, it depends on the user. After Li Ming obtained this dry ghost, he has been quietly refining it, because the dry ghost is full of Anzi's consciousness. Li Ming needs to remove all of its consciousness, before he can replace it with his own consciousness, and become the real master of the dry ghost. It is still a long way from here to the Burrell's galaxy. During this period of time, Li Ming will start to practice. At this moment, on a marginal planet outside the Virgo galaxy cluster, a golden figure stood quietly on the roof of a black building complex. The entire surface of the planet is surrounded by black buildings, densely packed, and these black buildings stand tall like bell towers. In addition, the starman is burly, with golden armor on his body, his hair standing up, and he is majestic and domineering. After standing there for a while, a faint light suddenly flashed behind him, and a circle of ripples spread out on the ground. After a few seconds, a beam of light fell from the sky, and another alien arrived. This alien also had golden armor on his body, but he had a mask on his head. His feet were off the ground, floating quietly in the air. His body was more than 2 meters tall, which was enough to show his difference. Peogu, you are really punctual. A soft female voice came from under the mask. Cannonbone glanced behind him and said, Nuaya, are the people I want ready? Nuaya laughed a few times and said, Flowers from the Burrow's galaxy is about to withdraw recently, and I'm planning to transfer him to your Cheyenne organization. Cannonbone nodded slightly, and with a solemn expression, he continued, one person is still too few. Recently, 2 troublesome characters have appeared in our galaxy group. I have lost 4 people and urgently need supplies. Oh. Nuaya showed a look of surprise. Her figure slowly floated to the side of Cannonbone and said, 4 people. There are such powerful people. Cannonbone looked solemn, and after taking a deep breath, he said, there are only 2 people who pose the greatest threat in our galaxy group now. One is that guy, Heo's in, and the other, if nothing unexpected happens, he should have arrived in your Virgo cluster. This person is only a level 1.9 civilization. Let him continue. Nuaya turned her head slightly to the side and looked at Peogu, then said, these two people caused your Cheyenne organization to lose 4 people. And, there is also a 1.9 level civilization? Peogu, you have seriously neglected your duty this time. Peogu's face changed slightly, and his eyes turned to look at Nuaya beside him. After hesitating for a moment, he said, no, these 4 people died at the hands of one person, that guy from the 1.9 level civilization. While speaking, Peogu raised his hand and handed over a metal ball, saying, this is his information. Nuaya was stunned on the spot, and after a slight hesitation, she took the metal ball in her hand. At this time, Peogu continued, 3 of them died together, which means that 3 level 2 civilizations were all killed when fighting against this 1.9 level civilization. As soon as this sentence came out, it was like a thunderbolt flashing through Nuaya's mind. Nuaya, who was still checking the metal ball, was stunned. Chapter 531 Reasons for Withdrawal. Nuaya was no longer as calm as before. She looked through the mask and began to carefully look at the information in the metal ball in her hand. The metal ball recorded the known information about Li Ming in detail, including Li Ming's appearance, activity trajectory, and the last place he disappeared. It also emphasized the information that Li Ming disappeared on a spaceship. A 1.9 level civilization killed 3 second level civilizations at once. This was almost unimaginable and extremely terrifying, because in terms of civilization level, the second level civilization almost crushed the first level civilization. Even a 1.9 level civilization could be killed in a snap of a finger. This was the suppression of energy and civilization level. But the information provided by the cannon bone obviously overturned Nuaya's cognition. Cannon bone then continued, Li Ming should have arrived at the Virgo galaxy cluster by now. My trouble has become your trouble. This time I came to you, in addition to asking for personnel, to tell you this news. Nuaya was stunned for a moment, but soon smiled and said, it's just right for him to come. It's a good opportunity for him to see the capabilities of the Earthbath organization. I will personally keep an eye on this person. Cannonbone glanced at the other party again and said, my matter of changing Heogsin has not been resolved yet. You should arrange the personnel issue as soon as possible. After saying this, Cannonbone moved and turned away. On the black roof, only Nuaya was left looking at the metal number in her hand, motionless. In the inner system of the Burrell's galaxy, a planet called Binder Star has appeared on the operating table. After a long flight, the spaceship has reached its destination. Binder Star is where Flowers lives, and the center of the entire Burrell's galaxy. Li Ming could not remember how long it had been, but he had made some achievements in his cultivation. He walked out of the auxiliary cabin and came to the main cabin. The 5 pet beasts were neatly standing in front of the operating table without moving. Li Ming just glanced at them and ignored them. He quickly walked to the operating table, checked them, and whispered, we are finally here. After saying this, he looked at the 5 pet beasts beside him seriously. With a wave of his right hand, the cloak behind him swayed, and the 5 guys were all put into the cloak. After doing this, Li Ming continued to look at the operating table. According to the information already obtained, the day of selection is getting closer and closer. Li Ming is now arriving ahead of schedule. Li Ming is very clear about returning the spaceship. Although he has no intention of returning it, in order to obtain information about Liu, Li Ming still has to take this opportunity to get closer to Flowers. As the spaceship slowly approaches Binder Star, pieces of information are transmitted to the main cabin of the spaceship. After all, this is the central area of the large galaxy, and Binder Star can be said to be the headquarters base of the entire Burrell's galaxy. The defense here is naturally very strict. After the connection was confirmed, the control of the spaceship was controlled by the ground command of Binder Star. After Li Ming's body twisted, he turned into the appearance of a general and established contact with the ground of Binder Star with the identity and personal information of the general. Regarding the spaceship, Li Ming explained the reason mainly by the general's encounter. After confirming the identity and the origin of the spaceship, the ground control base of Binder Star allowed the spaceship to enter, and at the same time, determined the landing position of the spaceship on Binder Star. These operations were seen by the general who Li Ming transformed into, and the next step was the landing process of the spaceship. During this period, Li Ming kept checking Binder Star, and the appearance of the entire planet and many geographical information also entered Li Ming's field of vision little by little. Binder Star, a planet full of technology, the entire planet's buildings are special metal structures, and the surface of the planet has been 100% developed. As long as you enter this planet, it is like entering a city. You can no longer see the original appearance of the planet, because the surface of the planet has been artificially transformed. The spaceship that Li Ming was riding landed in an empty area under the control of the ground. This area is independent, and not a spaceship berthing area. The ground is smooth and flat, like a huge square, surrounded by buildings of different heights. The entire square is circular with a diameter of more than 10 kilometers. The buildings on the edge surround this area like high-rise buildings. When the spaceship is more than 10 meters above the ground, it slowly stops. At this time, there are already 4 soldiers and a medium-sized aircraft waiting on the ground. The soldiers are fully armed, like robots. The surface of the aircraft is also silver metal, which is several times larger than an ordinary bus. A few seconds later, the bottom of the spaceship flashed with blue light, and the general slowly fell from it. As soon as his feet touched the ground, one of the soldiers came forward and said, "Lord Flowers is waiting in the palace." The general nodded slightly and said, "Then let's go." Under the guidance of the soldiers, Li Ming sat on the aircraft and looked around. These soldiers were already first-level civilizations. Under their wisdom, all kinds of information have entered their brains. Among the 5 large galaxies in the Virgo galaxy cluster, they are all large unified galaxies, and flatter collective civilization. Because they have to face the threat of death planets, the soldiers here need to reach first-level civilization. We took a flying machine to a tall palace. The whole palace was like a huge mushroom. It looked bright and beautiful, as if it was a real mushroom. Its large size and unique appearance made this building particularly conspicuous in the construction area. The flying machine stopped directly at the edge of the top. This was an aerial road, the same as the ground, except that after getting off here, you would directly enter the upper floors of the building. With a flash of light, a portal opened from the top of the mushroom. Li Ming walked out of the flying machine, and turned around to enter the portal. When Li Ming appeared again, he was already in a separate room. At this time, the room was empty. An alien was sitting at the table, looking at the blue light operation diagram on the table, and he looked very serious. This operation diagram was not from Binder Star, but an independent technological space. As soon as Li Ming entered, he focused his attention on the operation diagram. Li Ming did not disturb the other party, but the operation diagram caught Li Ming's attention. This operation diagram looked familiar. Li Ming had encountered this kind of technological civilization in this galaxy before, which was digital technology. Through a core device, an independent world formed by digital technology is created. In this world, the operator can create any item he wants at will. Although this technology is powerful, Li Ming is extremely disgusted. Although this world can provide a life without worries about food and clothing, this environment is like living in a world dominated by others. However, after thinking deeply, Li Ming doesn't care much about this kind of thing. If entering the digital world is equivalent to entering a virtual world of domination, then isn't the present a real world of domination? No matter what, you can't escape the control and domination of higher civilizations, and only by obtaining higher civilizations can you have the ability and cognition to dominate the world. Sit down. Flowers continued to operate the blue light map. The structure of this digital world was also grasped by Li Ming's wisdom. Obviously, this digital world is not for human survival. Li Ming did not reply, and came to the table, and sat down quietly. Flowers continued, "Do you understand digital technology?" Li Ming shook his head lightly and said nothing. Flowers smiled and continued, "This digital world is used to elect the next successor. If you don't understand it, it's a pity. After all, not everyone has the opportunity to see this world." Li Ming said nothing, just staring at it intently. Of course, Li Ming understood the digital world in front of him. There were various barriers and mechanisms in it, which were much more powerful than what Li Ming had known before. Flowers continued, when I first saw the spaceship, I thought Ans had returned. Now it seems Ans had an accident. It's been so long, and you're still thinking about him. Li Ming replied softly. But when Flowers heard this, his hand paused, his face changed slightly, and he hesitated for a moment before continuing to operate, and said coldly, thinking about? What I want is the Hands-How magic weapon on Ans, the dry ghost, so the whereabouts of the spaceship is the only way to find Ans. Li Ming was shocked when he heard this, and he didn't say a word, just staring at the other party intently. Chapter 532 Digital World. Ans is controlled by the Shenmue organization. Fortunately, the Shenmue organization has not discovered the magic weapon on him. As he said this, he stopped operating, turned his eyes to look at Li Ming, and continued, the reason why I chose to quit is to join the Shenmue organization, find Ans, and get back the magic weapon. After the cold voice, Flowers continued to operate. Li Ming's expression changed slightly when he heard this, and his eyes widened a little. Flowers didn't care at all and concentrated on operating the blue light map in his hand and continued, don't worry, the reason I tell you this is that I think you need to know what this space-time spaceship means. So, tell me all the information about this space-time spaceship. At the end, Flowers stopped operating again and looked at Li Ming quietly. Li Ming understood that what Flowers was concerned about was not the spaceship, but the whereabouts of Ans. Li Ming did not hide this, and directly told him about his encounter with space-time. From the general's point of view, this space-time spaceship did appear by chance. Du Lawrence naturally had a questioning expression on his face. After looking at Li Ming for a few times, he said, so, the spaceship was accidentally teleported to the battlefield. That's right. Li Ming replied with certainty. Flowers fell into deep thought, sometimes looking at Li Ming, sometimes rolling his eyes, thinking to himself, an empty spaceship was teleported back. Could it be that Ans is still under the control of the Shenmue organization? Thinking in his mind, after pondering for a moment, he said, General, you should go to the city to rest first. I will find someone to notify you after the election begins. Li Ming stood up and saluted, and replied, yes. Turning around and leaving the room, Li Ming frowned slightly. This Flowers chose to quit in order to join the Shenmue organization, or more precisely, to find Ans and seize the magic weapon on her body. In addition, the blue light operation diagram that Li Ming saw was a digital world, but through the observation of the wisdom eye, the structure of this digital world was extremely special. If it was used for election, it would inevitably lead to conflicts with other candidates. Li Ming didn't know the election rules yet, and Flowers didn't reveal them, but if he could get Liu Zuan through the election, it would be better than a head-on confrontation with Flowers. After leaving the palace, under the arrangement of two soldiers, Li Ming came to a separate building in the construction area, which was a temporary residence. Li Ming sat cross-legged in the room of the building. Although everything seemed to be going smoothly, Li Ming was always uneasy in his heart. While practicing, he released the flying dragon to see if there was any important information. The entire planet here has been artificially transformed, and the construction area is also all over the planet. Li Ming's flying dragon can only search in this construction area first. If he can find the whereabouts of Liu Zuan, it would be great. Li Ming was waiting for the election to start, and in the distant starry sky, a spaceship had quietly taken off from a black planet. In the main cabin of the spaceship was an alien covered with fur, as if the clothes he wore were fur. Under his gorilla-like face, there was a sinister look, and a weapon similar to a mace was hung on his back. On the console was a human-shaped pattern with blue light interweaving. It was Nuaya. Run Yulong, your goal this time is clear, right? First find the location of the spaceship, then determine the location of Li Ming. Don't act rashly. He is not an ordinary guy. Nuaya reminded. The alien named Run Yulong looked back at the other person with contempt, his mouth corners slightly raised, revealing sharp teeth, and said, since you asked me to go out, you don't have to ask too much about this matter. Nuaya paused after hearing this, and her eyes under the mask blinked slightly, but she didn't say anything more. Run Yulong looked confident, raised his hand to close the connection on the console, and began to determine the transmission coordinates and location. At this time, 3 spaceships had quietly approached the vicinity of Binder Star. These 3 spaceships were all from the satellite galaxies of the Borals galaxy, and their purpose here was to compete for the inheritance of the second-level civilization. Li Ming also closed his eyes and rested, staying motionless in his room. The entire construction area had been searched by Li Ming's flying dragon, but the whereabouts of Liu Zuan were not found, which made Li Ming frown slightly. It's not in the construction area, so it must be on flowers, Li Ming said secretly. Li Ming knew very well that the so-called inheritance was to hand over the existing Liu Zuan and other advanced materials to the successor. That is, as long as Li Ming won the election, he could get Liu Zuan. After some thinking, Li Ming calmed down and stopped thinking about Liu Zuan. Everything could only be planned after the election. At this time, the election had not yet begun, and Li Ming continued to close his eyes to practice star books and refine magic weapons. Day and night alternated. Time passed. The sky of the entire construction area flickered slightly, and in the mushroom-shaped palace, flowers were slowly rising from a blue light column. It did not stop until it reached the top floor of the palace. At this time, the mushroom roof of the entire palace slowly opened like a window. The first floor, where flowers was, immediately became an open-air platform. After a while, aircrafts came from all directions of the construction area. Flowers glanced at them and didn't pay attention. When the aircraft stopped one after another, 5 figures landed. These 5 people were the General of Timon's galaxy, Wei Long of Timothy galaxy, Garrett of Burrow's galaxy, and the remaining 2 were Lex and Ashman. Flowers rolled his eyes, glanced at the 5 people, and said, "The digital world for the election has been completed. Whoever of you 5 comes out first will be the best successor. I need to remind you again about the rules. You can fight, but no one can be injured or killed." Flowers said the last sentence sternly. The 5 people heard it clearly, looked at each other, and nodded slightly. Flowers nodded with satisfaction, turned his right hand, and a star bag appeared in his hand. He continued, "Inside is a flow and the power of moving clouds. Above your head is the entrance to the digital world. Similarly, that is also the exit. Whoever comes out first will get this thing." Flowers said quietly. The 5 people still looked at each other without saying a word, but they were already rubbing their hands in their hearts, ready to go at any time. Flowers glanced at the 5 people again and said, "I'll wait for you here. Now, you can go." As soon as the voice fell, the 5 people moved and flew straight into the sky. There was a black thundercloud vortex directly above the palace. The center of the vortex flashed with blue light. It was a portal. Li Ming was not in a hurry to enter. He slowed down his flying speed and followed the other 4 people. Looking at the blue hole above, he could identify it through his wisdom eyes. This hole was the portal. The other 4 people used their energy to increase their flying speed to the limit, fearing that they would fall behind the other party. The 5 people were all 1.9 level civilizations, and their energy was exactly the same. The speed competition now was just the type of star cultivation. The special star and different civilization background would change the flying speed. Although the order of the 5 people at this time had changed, the distance was not much. After a moment, the 5 people entered the blue hole in the sky like 5 drops of water and disappeared. The general, transformed by Li Ming, was also the last to enter. Flowers looked at these without saying a word, his expression indifferent. After confirming that the 5 people had entered, Flowers sat down slowly and did not move. The blue light flashed, and when he appeared again, he was already in a mountain range. After looking around, he found that the other 4 people were also near him. However, as soon as the 5 people appeared, the blue light hole behind them slowly disappeared. Li Ming looked back, then looked at the others, and moved his body, flying away first. Under his wise eyes, the structure of this digital world was already in Li Ming's grasp. Moreover, Li Ming had seen Flowers' production drawings before. He could not say that he had memorized them completely, but he basically knew the scale of this world in his heart. The entrance to the digital world is the exit. From the outside world, it seems to be the same place, but it is not the case inside the digital world. The exit inside the digital world needs to be found by yourself. The entrance just now disappeared after entering again, and the remaining exits depend on their own abilities. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 533 Exploration. The world in front of him was nothing but mountains and jungles. He knew in his heart that it was a digital world, but it looked exactly like the real world. Li Ming searched for the appearance of the production diagram in his memory while looking for the exit. According to Li Ming's memory, he could vaguely find the general direction of the exit, but the specific location still needed Li Ming to explore on his own. After flying for a while, Li Ming paused and suddenly stopped. Not long after he walked, a blue light hole appeared on the top of a mountain. It was a blue portal. Li Ming took a deep breath and looked over. Li Ming was just watching, and the other 4 had already surrounded him. General, the 5 of us came in together. Why do you have to be alone and so unsociable? Garrett said first after a strange smile. Li Ming turned his eyes to look at the other party. Under his wise eyes, the other party's little thoughts were already in front of him. Li Ming didn't have time to waste time with the other party at the moment, and he moved his body to prepare to fly away. But just as Li Ming moved, Ashman suddenly flashed to the opposite side of Li Ming. HMPH. After a cold snort, Ashman showed contempt and said, General, today is the day of the election. Logically, you and I should fight on our own, but I still want to talk about the K-Booster Wars. Li Ming turned his eyes and looked at the other party coldly, and at the same time, glanced at the others, his face gradually solemn. It turned out that the 4 people had already colluded. This election would not let the general pass smoothly. The 4 people immediately made the general lose the ability to run for election, and then the 4 of them would compete. This intention was fully revealed under Li Ming's insight. At this time, Ashman continued, in the Battle of K-Booster, you took the Heavenly Branch Flower, but why did you kill our people? Faced with this question, Li Ming only gave a cold look, smiled disdainfully, and said, so, you joined forces with the 3 minions to target me in this digital world? After saying this, before Ashman did anything, the other 3 people were already angry. Among them, Garrett's eyes were wide open and he said, you said we are minions? Li Ming smiled slightly and said again, isn't it? By the way, I advise you to find a way out quickly, if you have the time, and don't ask for trouble. Having said this, Li Ming's figure slowly rose, and he was about to fly away. But at this moment, Wei Long behind Li Ming suddenly gritted his teeth, and raised his hand to slap Li Ming. Li Ming's powerful consciousness had already noticed it, and he dodged it easily. At the same time, he turned around, and looked at Wei Long and said, Wei Long, you are Lord Flow's confidant, and you have the advantage of inheritance. Why are you mixed up with these people? Wei Long snorted coldly and said, General, you have always been arrogant, looking down on the 5 people, and want to have a share of the resources of several major galaxies. If you inherit the 2nd level civilization, then do we still have a way to survive? As he said this, the other people were already aggressive and ready to attack at any time. Li Ming saw this, and shook his head lightly, saying, it seems that you have given up inheriting the 2nd level civilization. Ashman clenched his fists tightly at this moment and shouted, then don't talk nonsense with him, let's do it together, and beat him up first. As soon as he said this, Ashman moved his body, and took the lead, and the others did not neglect to rush up. Li Ming was calm, just glanced at the 4 people with disdain, and waved his right hand lightly, and saw a green light flashing, and a phantom green flame burst out of Li Ming's body. As soon as the cyan flame appeared, 4 cyan shadows stretched out their arms, and with a series of snap, snap, snap sounds, the cyan hands tightly grasped the 4 people one by one. Under the powerful mental force, the 4 people's bodies suddenly stiffened, and could not move. Everyone's expression was extremely painful, as if they were suffering from great mental pain. Li Ming narrowed his eyes slightly, secretly exerted force, and clenched his 4 hands at the same time. A light snap sound was heard, as if 4 balloons were squeezed and burst. The 4 people only felt a sharp pain in their heads, and their eyes went black, and they fainted directly. Seeing that the 4 people had no resistance, Li Ming raised his hand and put away the cyan shadows. Because Flowers had explained before that the lives of these people could not be harmed, Li Ming only attacked the consciousness of these 4 people, causing them to faint temporarily. Watching the bodies of the 4 people fall to the ground, Li Ming turned around and left directly. Li Ming had seen the production diagram of the digital world before, so he could find the approximate direction of the exit. If not, it would take some time to find the exit. After determining a direction, the cloak behind Li Ming shook and turned into a pair of wings, and his figure flew out as fast as an arrow. Li Ming wanted to leave this digital world as quickly as possible and get the advanced materials, but Li Ming didn't know that something had happened in the outside world at this time. Flowers, who was originally sitting on the roof, stood up straight at this time and looked at a blue light connection diagram in front of him. In the blue light, it was Run Yulong's face. "You mean, the person is with you?" Run Yulong said in surprise. Flowers did not dare to neglect and quickly replied, "The spaceship is indeed here with me, but the person, I did not see it, because the spaceship was found on Kabu Star. I guess that person should have hidden on Kabu Star." Run Yulong hesitated, thought for a while, and replied, "Okay, then I will go to Kabu Star to see what's going on." After saying this, Run Yulong disconnected. But at this time, Flowers fell into deep thought, occasionally looking up at the sky, thinking, the general did not mention such a person. The first place where the spaceship appeared was Kabu Star, and when the general found the spaceship later, there was no one inside. So this person is very likely to be on Kabu Star. I still have to ask the general carefully when he comes out. Flowers analyzed this in his mind, and then looked at the blue hole in the sky. At this time, Li Ming was still flying in the digital world. Under the blessing of Liu Anwing, Li Ming's flying speed was extremely fast, and he soon arrived at the area in his memory. But Li Ming's face was not good, because there were a lot of blue light holes under this area. There must be only one portal leading to the outside world. Looking around, Li Ming lowered his body a little bit, and then thought of something. When he just entered the digital world, Li Ming encountered a blue light hole, but Li Ming, who had seen the production diagram, knew very well that the exit could not be there. He also saw many along the way, but there were not as many as the ones in front of him now. While looking at his body, he slowly lowered his body until he stopped at a height of more than 10 meters above the ground. This height could be close to the huge blue light hole, but such a large number made Li Ming feel troubled. There were at least 30 or 40 light holes here at a glance. The most important thing was that these light holes were real portals. That is, if you went the wrong way, you might be teleported to other places. Thinking of this, Li Ming had come to the nearest light hole. After looking around, he did not go in directly. He raised his finger and shot out a green light. It was a little bit of Li Ming's consciousness. As soon as the consciousness entered it, there was a muffled hum sound, and that consciousness immediately disconnected from Li Ming. At the same time, the light hole in front of him quickly shrank and disappeared on the spot. Li Ming frowned slightly, and his eyes immediately looked at other teleportation light holes. At this moment, Li Ming was already very clear that this fake light hole was once entered, he would be teleported to other places, and he could not be teleported back from a distance. As for where to be teleported, Li Ming did not know, but the digital world was unpredictable, and Li Ming did not want to waste too much time. In this case, Li Ming would have to constantly use consciousness to test. Although his own consciousness was strong, it could not withstand such consumption. With his right hand supporting his chin, flying slowly at low altitude, Li Ming had to think of a better countermeasure. Looking with his eyes, Li Ming did think of something. With a slight smile on his lips, he slowly raised his right hand, and a black light flashed in his palm. A mass of black matter appeared in his palm little by little, which was the microworm. There were a large number of microworms in Li Ming's Fingyan, and these microworms were still evolving and reproducing, and the number was increasing, so using microworms to detect was more suitable. Chapter 534, Pursuit. Li Ming had already made up his mind. He waved his right hand and a black cloud flew out. Black microworms gathered together densely, like black clouds. The black microworms were newly bred microworms. Because the previous microworms had evolved into gray, there would be no loss in using black ones for testing. The cloud of microworms floated slowly in the air and then divided into dozens of parts and began to enter the blue light holes. After a while, the entire blue light hole gradually extinguished and disappeared like a lamp, and Li Ming looked at them with a satisfied smile. When there was only one blue light hole left, Li Ming flew over. After passing through this light hole, he felt a bright light in front of his eyes. When he reappeared, Li Ming was already in the air above the palace. He turned around and looked behind him. The vortex cloud in the sky was the entrance to the digital world just now. He looked down and saw flowers on the top of the palace was still waiting on the roof. At the same time, he raised his eyes and looked at Li Ming. Li Ming then flew and came to the top of the palace from the air. Flowers laughed and said, "I didn't expect you to be the first one to come out." Li Ming just smiled and said nothing. Flowers then moved his right hand, and the star bag appeared again. Looking at the star bag in his hand, Flowers hesitated and said, "Okay, I'll give you the advanced materials." As he spoke, he threw the star bag to Li Ming. Li Ming raised his hand to take it. After a slight sense, he was overjoyed. In this star bag, there was a Liu Kang and the power of Xingyan. The smile on his face faded, and he clenched his palm and put away the star bag. Although he got a Liu Kang, he only completed 1/3 of the materials. For ordinary aliens, this Liu Kang is naturally enough, but for Li Ming, 3 are needed. Flowers looked at Li Ming with a strange look and said, "General, from now on, you can start to arrange your advancement. After you become a level 2 civilization, the safety of our Burrell's galaxy will be handed over to you, and I will report to the Earthbath Organization." The Earthbath Organization? Li Ming secretly wondered, but he said, "Lord Flowers, please rest assured, I will do my best to protect the Burrell's galaxy." Flowers waved his hand and smiled. "Don't be in a hurry to say that. I still need to tell you about some of the responsibilities of the level 2 civilization." Responsibilities? Li Ming was shocked and said so. Flowers nodded slightly and continued. After reaching the level 2 civilization, the strength has greatly increased. In addition to stopping the attack of the Death Planet, there are some things that must be done. Li Ming narrowed his eyes slightly, but did not look, just listened carefully. Flowers continued. Another responsibility of the level 2 civilization is to go to the Penelope galaxy. Li Ming's expression changed slightly when he heard this. The Penelope galaxy is where the Death Planet is located. There are a large number of Zerg and warcraft there. It is also the biggest threat to the Virgo galaxy cluster, and of course, the most dangerous place. Flowers continued. The Penelope galaxy is located between the 5 major galaxies. Every once in a while, the second level civilizations of our 5 major galaxies must join forces to enter the Penelope galaxy. Because there is an undead Zerg core on the Sirius Death Planet in the Penelope galaxy, we need to join forces to enter this planet every once in a while to weaken this Zerg core. This can slow down the power of the Zerg. Our invasion is inevitable and necessary. Flowers said firmly. Li Ming listened carefully, but still said nothing. This matter was not in the information Li Ming had obtained before, but now it seems that only the second level civilization knows it. "Do you understand?" Flowers said afterwards. Li Ming nodded slightly and replied with 2 words, "I understand." At this time, Li Ming's face was more solemn, because according to the information Li Ming had obtained, the Death Planet of the Penelope galaxy was extremely dangerous, and it could be said that it was a life or death situation. This responsibility of the second level civilization also made Li Ming a little scared. However, Li Ming did not really take this matter to heart, because the Liuan that Li Ming wanted was already in hand, and as for the others, it was naturally none of Li Ming's business. Flowers stepped forward a few steps, came in front of Li Ming, and said, "But don't worry, this Penelope galaxy group, each large galaxy will send 2 people. In addition to the second level civilization, there will also be a 1.9 level civilization. Because, in addition to weakening the insect core, there is another precious resource on the Sirius Death Planet." At this point, Flowers suddenly paused. Li Ming's expression was also tense, because judging from the other party's tone, this extra resource seemed to be extremely rare. Seeing Li Ming's curious and nervous expression, Flowers laughed and continued, "The name of this resource is Zinti." "Zinti?" Li Ming was confused and didn't know what it was. Flowers continued, this item is a range advanced item. Only a second level civilization can use it. You won't understand it now. Li Ming's eyes widened a little, and his face became more curious. Li Ming naturally knew about the range advanced item. Needless to say, the preciousness of this item is naturally indispensable for Li Ming to reach the current level of civilization. Of course, it is not accidental that Li Ming has used the range advanced material ring so many times in the first level civilization. For ordinary aliens, most of them are advanced one level at a time. As for Inksu, they basically dare not even think about it. Li Ming chose such a rare object for other reasons. The range advanced item can not only advance significantly, but also avoid the situation where multiple materials are needed. After all, Li Ming's advancement requires 3 copies of any material, but with the range advanced material, this trouble can be avoided. After hearing about the object of Zinti and the other party's explanation, Li Ming was very interested in it. However, because he could not see the other party's thoughts with his wisdom eyes, the accuracy of this news could not be determined. Li Ming was thinking in his heart, and Flower said again, now the day of entering the Penelope Galaxy next time is getting closer and closer, so you should hurry up to advance during this period. Li Ming bowed and saluted, and replied, understood. Although he said so, it was definitely not possible to advance. Li Ming needed at least 3 Leon. He only got 1 now, so how could he advance? Thinking of this, Li Ming bowed again and saluted, and replied, then I will go back and prepare first. Flowers nodded lightly, waved his hand, and did not care. Li Ming also slowly stepped back, and left this place. Back to his residence in the construction area, Li Ming sat in the room and pondered. It is impossible to advance. It is impossible to complete it with the existing materials, but how to get Leon again? Li Ming needs to solve this problem. Just as Li Ming was thinking about this, a spaceship was approaching the Binder star. In the main cabin of the spaceship was Run Yutaki, who was looking at the operating console and said dissatisfiedly, Flowers, I have checked the planet Cabe, and there is no person I'm looking for. Are you intentionally hiding it from me? Flowers was shocked when he heard this, and quickly replied, Lord Yutaki, you are joking. How could I, a person who has already decided to quit, lie to you? Besides, I will join the Earthbath organization after I quit. What good will this lie do me? Run Yutaki still snorted unhappily and said, I'm on my way to the planet Binder now. I must find that guy. Flowers paused at first, but his eyes seemed to suddenly think of something. After hesitating for a while, he replied, it's just right for you to come to the planet Binder. This space-time spaceship was discovered by the general of the Timmins Galaxy. You can ask him directly. Run Yutaki snorted and said, I'll be there soon. Let him wait for me in your palace. Flowers did not dare to hesitate, and immediately replied, I'll arrange it right away. After saying this, the connection between the two was disconnected. At this time, Flowers was still on the top of the palace. He looked up at the sky. The remaining 4 people had not appeared yet. He turned around with dissatisfaction and returned to the building from the blue light. Chapter 535, Holy Martial Purple Light. In a separate room in the palace, Flowers stood in front of the console. The console was still displaying the scene of the digital world, with 4 light spots moving inside. What a waste. Flowers raised his hand and pointed. A faint light flashed, and a command message came out, the digital world is closing. After doing this, Flowers sighed, shook his head slightly, and pointed at the console again, saying, ask the general to come to my palace. After that, Flowers hung up the line directly, paused for a while, and turned away. After a while, the vortex in the sky gradually stopped, the black clouds dissipated little by little, the entrance to the digital world disappeared little by little, and 4 figures emerged in the air. These 4 people were the 4 people who had just entered the digital world with Li Ming, but the sudden disappearance of the digital world made the 4 people startled and looked at each other at a loss. Li Ming, who received Flowers' message, also flew to the palace in confusion. Before approaching the palace, the 4 people in the sky had been noticed by Li Ming. He raised his head slightly, looked at the 4 people, and then looked at the sky higher. The dark cloud vortex had disappeared, leaving only a blank sky. Ignoring the 4 people, Li Ming's figure went straight to the palace, but the 4 people in the sky saw Li Ming in a blink of an eye. "It's the general, this guy." Garrett was the first to notice Li Ming, and said with some surprise. Wei Long looked at Li Ming with gritted teeth at this moment, whispering, "It seems that this guy's already the successor of the second level civilization." As soon as this sentence came out, it seemed to wake up the other 3 people. As Wei Long said, they had returned to the real world, but Li Ming came back one step earlier than them, which meant that Li Ming was the winner of the election. Among the 4 people, Ashman's face was the ugliest. His eyes were wide open, his mouth was slightly open, and he couldn't say a word. While the 4 people were watching, Li Ming had already flashed into the palace. What should we do now?" Garrett asked in horror, after looking at the others. Ashman was already stunned and at a loss, and the crowd was gritting their teeth in hatred, but Lex, who had been silent, said at this time, "Let's go into the palace too." Fortunately, the general has not yet advanced to the second level civilization, but has won a quota. After saying this, Lex moved and went straight down. The other 3 did not understand for a moment, but when they thought about what Lex said, they looked at each other, as if they had thought of something, and then leaned down together. Once they entered the palace, in a long corridor, Flowers was already standing at the end of the corridor waiting. Li Ming looked at Flowers, not knowing why the other party asked him to come over. After a slight pause, he slowly walked over. Seeing Li Ming approaching little by little, Flowers raised his hand and opened a door on the side of the corridor. After Li Ming was completely close, Flowers said, "Wait here first, an important person will see you later." "Important person?" Li Ming looked puzzled. Flowers smiled and said, "Don't worry, you will know when you see it." Because of the difference in level, Li Ming's eyes could not see the information he wanted from Flowers' brain, but he did not ask any more questions. He turned around and entered the room. Bang! The door closed. This sound made Li Ming's mind tremble. He turned around and looked at it with a look of surprise. The door of this room is not a portal." He said that he didn't care too much and walked to the table in the room and sat down. With Li Ming's current cognition, he couldn't think of who would come to see him. Although he couldn't see the information from Flowers' brain, Li Ming still had to be careful. After all, he was the only one who knew his situation and identity best. Thinking of this, Li Ming turned his hand and a small green dragon was already in his hand. "No matter who wants to see me, it's always right to know in advance." Whispering in his mouth, the green dragon in his hand flew out with a whoosh and disappeared directly in his hand. With the flying dragon probing outside, Li Ming was relieved to close his eyes and rest. Meanwhile, in another room, Flowers was looking at the 4 people in front of him with an unhappy face. After a slight snort, he said, "Like you, I don't like the general very much, but don't forget that the existence of the second level civilization is to resist the invasion of the Death Planet and weaken the Zerg. The general was able to come out before you, which shows that he has this ability. It is also for the good of our respective tribes to hand over the second level civilization to him to inherit, so don't think about this matter anymore." Flowers said firmly. The 4 people didn't dare to have any objections when they heard this. Although the 4 of them didn't like the general very much, in terms of personal strength, the 4 of them really couldn't compete with the general. What's more, in the digital world before, the 4 of them were subdued by the general, so they didn't dare to say anything more, even though they had resentment in their hearts. Flowers looked at the 4 people in front of him and said with dissatisfaction, "If you want to blame someone, you can only blame your lack of ambition and personal ability, which allowed him to get there first. You still have to maintain a good relationship with him in the future. After all, once he enters the second level civilization, the gap in strength between you will be huge." As he said this, a light suddenly flashed on the table in front of him, and a message popped up in the blue light. Flowers looked at the content of the message, immediately raised his hand, then hurriedly stood up and said, "I'm going to deal with something else. You'd better not walk around." As he spoke, Flowers walked away quickly. At this time, a spaceship had stopped steadily above the palace, and a blue light shot out from the bottom of the spaceship, like a laser shooting out to the roof. The blue beam shot to the roof, and then turned into a figure. It was Run Yulong. Flowers was already waiting on the roof, and when he saw Run Yulong, he immediately stepped forward and saluted. Run Yulong waved his hand and said, "Where is the person? Take me to see him first." Flowers smiled and said, "I have asked the general to wait next year. Please come this way." Then the two of them entered another blue light together, and all of this was seen by Feilong. Li Ming frowned slightly and whispered, "Level 2.2 civilization, and I have never seen this person." He was thinking in his mind while speaking. However, after thinking about it again, this person just came to see the general. Now Li Ming has transformed into the general and has obtained all the knowledge and consciousness of the general. He can answer whatever the other party asks, so he doesn't need to care. Thinking of this, Li Ming was relieved. However, the technology of this level 2 civilization is indeed extraordinary. The spacecraft can transmit farther and faster, and the blue light beam transmission ladder has been changed to a transmission beam for getting on and off the spacecraft, which is faster than before. Just a beam of light is enough. These changes opened Li Ming's eyes and made him yearn for the level 2 civilization. Just as he was thinking, a light squeak sound was heard, and the door at the entrance suddenly opened. Li Ming immediately stood up and looked up. Flowers and Run Yulong walked in together. Li Ming immediately bowed to them when he saw them. Flowers immediately said, "This is the general." He was the first to discover the spaceship. Run Yulong did not say a word, but just watched quietly. His cold expression was calm. He came to sit opposite Li Ming. He did not say a word, but just turned his right hand, and a ball of purple light was already in his hand. When he saw the purple light, Li Ming's expression immediately tensed up, and his body shrank slightly. Run Yulong smiled lightly and said, "Don't be nervous. This is the Shengwu purple light. It won't hurt you. It's just to detect your consciousness." While speaking, Run Yulong suddenly pushed his right hand, and the purple light went straight to Li Ming. Before the purple light got close to him, Li Ming's body surface flashed with green light, and a green barrier immediately appeared on the surface of his body and isolated the purple light. With a light snap sound, the purple light was completely blocked. Seeing this, Run Yulong's expression suddenly changed, and he made a sound of ha. Obviously, Li Ming's resistance caused Run Yulong's dissatisfaction. At this time, Flowers immediately said in a stern voice, "General, Lord Yulong just checked your consciousness. What do you mean by this?" Chapter 536, Escape. Li Ming didn't know what the Shengwu purple light was, but since it was used for exploration, Li Ming would naturally not allow it. It was unknown what special abilities this second level civilization had. If it was easily explored, it would inevitably be exposed. Run Yulong raised his eyes slightly, looked at Li Ming, and said, "It seems that I have to take action." Li Ming's eyes turned and glanced at the two people in front of him. He immediately realized that the situation was not good. As soon as the other party finished speaking, Li Ming suddenly slapped the table with his right hand, and a ball of green light spread out from his palm. Bang bang bang. Wherever the green light passed, a large number of vines grew directly. In a blink of an eye, the whole room and the whole palace were surrounded by vines. The vines did not stop there, and the palace was still surrounded by vines. The green mist spread wildly with the vines, and the ground and buildings collapsed instantly. In front of the fast-growing vines, the buildings here were completely vulnerable. The huge palace rumbled directly and collapsed instantly under the vines. At this time, Li Ming had already flown into the air. His body surface twisted and deformed and restored to the appearance of Li Ming. Looking down, a large number of vines were like tentacles, growing and attacking at the same time. The aliens who were originally in the building began to resist the attack of the vines and flew out. With two light bangs, a grey-black figure flew out from below, and his strong body broke the vines, standing out from the debris of the building and vines like a cannonball. It was Run Yulong. When Li Ming saw this person, his face changed slightly, and the cloak behind him suddenly shook and turned into white wings. Run Yulong, who had just flown out, saw Li Ming at once, and his eyes widened a little. Under his sharp eyes, he said viciously, "What a surprise. I thought you would hide in a corner, but I didn't expect you to be right under my nose." While speaking, he flipped his right hand and took off the weapon on his body. This weapon looked like a mace, but there were no spikes on the stick, but some purple runes. Seeing this, the muscles on Li Ming's face trembled with threat. With a level 2.2 civilization, Li Ming was absolutely powerless to fight. The wings behind him flapped, and his body shot out like a beam of white light. He was fleeing to the distance. The Liuan wings moved, and the flying speed reached the limit in an instant, just like a beam of white light flying in front of his eyes, and suddenly became a light spot in the distance. This speed also surprised Run Yulong, but he did not panic. He tightly grasped the weapon in his right hand and whispered, "Instant shadow strike." Swoosh! Run Yulong's body flashed and disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, he was already above Li Ming's head. He opened his mouth and roared, "Go to hell." The purple stick in his hand smashed down head on. Bang! The mace smashed down instantly, and the whole space trembled immediately. Purple lights spread out with the mace as the center, like a large purple net spread out. The area of several kilometers was covered by purple light. A second later, boom! A loud noise was heard, and the buildings and stores under the purple light collapsed instantly. All the buildings turned into debris, and the ground also cracked. The entire purple light covered area was like a mirror. When it was hit, the mirror surface shattered, and those buildings and the ground were the broken mirror surface. The power of this attack was really good, but when Run Yulong put away the mace, he did not see Li Ming's figure, only the ruins below. He actually dodged. Run Yulong showed an unbelievable expression, and after his eyes turned around, he quickly locked a position in the distance. Li Ming's figure was already at the edge of the construction area, and his body was not injured at all. If it was someone else, he would definitely not be able to withstand this attack, but Li Ming was different. He had the ability of teleportation and the ability of instantaneous light slash, so he was able to dodge the attack just now. But this also made Li Ming pale, and he looked at the other party with a look of surprise. Li Ming had seen this kind of teleportation ability before, but no one could match Li Ming. The 2.2 level civilization in front of him was obviously practicing a more powerful star class, which made Li Ming have to be more cautious. The common weakness of this ability is that it cannot be used continuously. At the same time, each use consumes a lot of energy and has great requirements on the body. Looking at Run Yulong in the distance, Li Ming's eyes turned slightly, because the other party may also have the ability to use it continuously, so Li Ming still has to be careful. Under the turning eyes, Li Ming saw the silver-white spaceship. The spaceship is the guarantee of escape. If you can't leave this planet through the spaceship, then there is only one way to go. The spaceship is not far from Li Ming. After taking a look, Li Ming has made a decision. The wings behind him fluttered slightly, and his figure went straight to the spaceship. Li Ming under the Liuan wings is extremely fast. Although the second level civilization can also reach this speed, Run Yulong has seen Li Ming's intention, and it is too late to stop him. "Want to run?" he said viciously, and his eyes turned to look at the spaceship behind him. This spaceship was driven by Run Yulong. Seeing Li Ming heading straight for the spaceship, Run Yulong turned quickly and went to his own spaceship. In just a moment, the spaceship under Li Ming's control took the lead and started, without even having time to use its teleportation ability, and turned its head and soared into the sky. Run Yulong's spaceship followed closely behind and chased after Li Ming's spaceship. Li Ming in the main cabin was now in front of the operating table. He aimed at the operating table and lightly tapped it. He could not get rid of the opponent by flying close to the table. More importantly, once more enemy spaceships came, Li Ming's situation would be dangerous. 10 seconds later, the spaceship rushed out of the planet and entered the space, and Li Ming immediately started random teleportation. Random teleportation is the fastest way of transmission. The system of the spaceship will directly select safe coordinates for transmission. As a spaceship of the second level civilization, the transmission speed is already very fast, far beyond the first level civilization. But Run Yulong behind him also flashed. As a spaceship of the second level civilization, Run Yulong's spaceship is naturally extremely powerful. A light hum sound was heard, and a red light flashed on the operating table. Li Ming's spaceship had been locked by the opponent. Li Ming's expression changed when he saw this, but he continued to operate the system with his hands. "Want to run? It's not that easy," Run Yulong whispered angrily in the main cabin. While he was talking, the attack device of the spacecraft was already in place, and a red ball of light had formed at the muzzle. But just as he was about to launch, Li Ming's spaceship suddenly disappeared in a flash. Although Li Ming was teleported away, the location of his spaceship was still on Run Yulong's console. Seeing this, Run Yulong immediately stopped attacking and began to teleport and chase. The energy ball that had just formed at the muzzle dissipated immediately, and the spaceship also disappeared in a flash a few seconds later. The teleportation distance of a second-level civilization spaceship is much higher than that of a first-level civilization, but the distance of the spaceship radar detection is also farther. It is almost impossible for a spaceship with the same technology to get rid of the other party. While teleporting, Li Ming was thinking about countermeasures. At the moment, Li Ming was not in any danger for a while, and he just teleported and escaped. A space map was displayed on the console, which detailed the distribution of nearby galaxies and the names of planets. Li Ming looked at this information and kept searching for places to hide from the other party. But among the many galaxies, there is no suitable place at all. When Li Ming was checking, a blank area appeared in the space map. There are only a few planets with names in the whole blank area. In other places, the location of the planet can be seen, but there is not much information. And the whole blank area is written with a few big words. Penelope Galaxy. Unknowingly, Li Ming's spacecraft is close to this large galaxy full of alien insects and monsters. It is no wonder that there is so little information here. Looking at the blank area on the space map, Li Ming's brows frowned slightly. The Penelope Galaxy is very dangerous. It is bound to be disadvantageous to enter Ashley, but Run Yulong behind him is not easy to mess with, which makes Li Ming face a choice. After thinking for a while, Li Ming still resolutely chose the Penelope Galaxy. Relatively speaking, there are no other civilizations in this large galaxy. Li Ming does not have to worry about exposing his identity and fleeing everywhere. Even though the monsters and Zerg are extremely dangerous, it is always easier to deal with monsters and alien insects than to deal with secondary civilizations. Chapter 537, Blood Coagulation Beast. After a series of transmissions, the spaceship that Li Ming was riding on successfully entered the Penelope Galaxy. Run Yulong, who had been behind Li Ming, also frowned and widened his eyes. After arriving at the edge of the Penelope Galaxy, the spaceship stopped transmitting and remained stationary. Run Yulong just looked at the operating table quietly and whispered, "This guy actually entered the Penelope Galaxy?" Watching Li Ming's spaceship gradually disappear on the operating table, Run Yulong had no intention of chasing, but just looked at it quietly, with a look of thinking about something else. After a moment, Run Yulong slowly raised his hand and a light flashed on the console, and Run Yulong continued, "Nuaya, I have found that guy, but when I was tracking him, he ran into the Penelope Galaxy." Nua's voice then came from the console, "Entering the Penelope Galaxy?" Run Yulong continued, "The center of the Penelope Galaxy is a dark area. No spacecraft can pass through, and the periphery is full of death planets. I think he will most likely die in there." Nua hesitated and did not respond. After a while, she said, "What I want is the result. I don't want to see this kid coming out of the Penelope Galaxy again." Run Yulong understood what Nua meant when he heard this. After a slight smile, he replied, "I understand. I will monitor and observe here for a while." After saying this, the connection was disconnected. Looking at the radar on the console, Run Yulong whispered, "Even a second-level civilization has to join forces to enter a mere 1.9-level civilization." At this moment, Li Ming's spaceship is no longer transmitting, and it is slowly floating in the vast universe like a small boat. The current location is the Penelope Galaxy. From the console, this large galaxy is the same as other large galaxies, all of which are constructed by star systems and other celestial bodies. There is nothing unusual on the surface: planets, stars, and various nebulae and celestial bodies. If it weren't for knowing in advance that there are a large number of dead planets here, Li Ming would even think that this is an ordinary large galaxy. Looking at the light spot on the console, it is currently in the outer system of the Penelope Galaxy. Although the direction is the middle system, Li Ming has no intention of entering. He came to this place to avoid Run Yulong's pursuit, and from the radar, the other party did not follow, which means that this large galaxy is indeed quite terrifying. The spaceship is flying slowly, and now Li Ming has entered a star system. Since this is the place of Zerg and Beastmen, as long as we don't land, we will be safe. Thinking of this, Li Ming showed a hint of danger. But before this smile began to unfold, a light spot on the radar was approaching Li Ming quickly. This startled Li Ming, and he quickly perked up. At the same time, he raised his hand and saw a blue light flashing, and the light spot had become clearly visible. Electromagnetic wave. Li Ming opened his mouth wide. As Li Ming said, the light spot flying towards Li Ming was a huge electromagnetic wave. This kind of attack weapon is actually rare, because the weapon is slow and not as powerful as a high energy laser. Only low-level civilizations will choose this weapon. However, there are only a few civilized creatures in the Penelope galaxy, and they are all above the first level civilization. Why are there such low-level weapons and attack themselves? Without caring too much, Li Ming activated the energy shield of the spacecraft and then prepared to avoid it. But at this moment, in the originally empty starry sky, one after another, light spots suddenly appeared, and these light spots were actually electromagnetic wave attacks. The attacker's face suddenly became ugly. This kind of high frequency and high density attack would be difficult for the spacecraft to withstand for too long, even if it had an energy shield. Not daring to think too much, Li Ming started the spacecraft and increased the speed of flight. The electromagnetic waves approached one after another. Although Li Ming was trying his best to avoid them, a lot of electromagnetic waves still hit the surface of the spacecraft. This won't work. While the energy shield could still resist, Li Ming immediately started the transmission system. Under the attack, the spacecraft began to forcibly transmit with the support of the energy shield. Lightning flashed and the surface of the spacecraft turned. Boom. The explosion sounded, but at the moment of the explosion, the spacecraft was a light and shadow that disappeared on the spot. When the spacecraft appeared again, it was still in this galaxy, but it came to the vicinity of a planet from its previous position. The spacecraft was also damaged under multiple attacks. Li Ming looked at the operating table, hoping to operate the spacecraft, but the damaged part had affected the normal operation of the system, and the spacecraft could no longer transmit again. Li Ming was immediately at a loss. He looked at the operating table intently, and the information of the planet in front of him had already emerged. Death planet, Sirius. This is one of the few recorded planets among the many death planets. Li Ming looked at him with a grim expression, but the next moment, a light spot suddenly shot out from Sirius. It was another electromagnetic wave. Seeing this attack, Li Ming suddenly realized that the attack just now was actually done by the alien insect monster. Boom. A violent explosion spread out, and the spaceship was blazing, like a spaceship on fire, with constant explosions in the flames. At this time, the spaceship was completely scrapped. Under the gravity of Sirius, the spaceship began to fall, approaching this unknown planet from space little by little. Bang. As soon as it entered the atmosphere, the spaceship quickly disintegrated and turned into pieces of fireballs chasing the ground. Like a group of meteors, it scattered and fell to various places on the ground. And Li Ming was also among these fragments at this time, and his whole body was wrapped in the golden light group of the magic shield, which made Li Ming not suffer any damage, but his body was already falling rapidly under the gravity of the planet itself. Sirius is divided into 2 continents and 2 oceans. The oceans are in the shape of vertical strips. The 2 oceans are like 2 blue strips that separate the planet, so 2 continents are formed. The colors of the 2 continents are completely different. One is gray-black and the other is blue-green. This is not the effect of alternating day and night, but the nature of the land. The place where Li Ming fell at this moment was a blue-green area. The entire Sirius is several times larger than the Earth, so the 2 continents are also extremely large. The terrain in the continent is complex, with mountains, rivers, and everything. Some of the rivers are connected to the sea. The information of the planet is recorded on the operating table of the spacecraft. Although Li Ming did not look closely, he also remembered a general geographical environment. Li Ming in the air constantly generated energy to resist the gravity of the planet. At the same time, the cloak behind him also turned into a pair of wings. Under the dual power, Li Ming's falling speed began to be difficult, and he stabilized his body when he was hundreds of meters above the ground. At this time, looking down and looking around, Li Ming was above a jungle. There was a small river in the jungle. Apart from that, it was quiet and there was nothing unusual. Li Ming managed to stabilize his body, but the spaceship fragments hit the ground directly. Boom. Explosions sounded from all around, which were caused by the spaceship landing. Looking at the spaceship fragments that fell to the ground, Li Ming sighed slightly. Without the spaceship, it meant that Li Ming would not be able to leave this planet. Even if he could forcefully fly away into space, without the spaceship, Li Ming could only be trapped in this area. Li Ming was still in a daze, and suddenly a sharp bird cry came from the distance in the sky, and a big red bird flew in the distance. The bird was red in color, more than 2 meters long, and was considered a relatively small size among beasts. Along with the bird's cry, the jungle below suddenly made a bang bang sound of footsteps, as if some large wild beast was running. Li Ming glanced at the ground, and more could see the figure of a wild beast passing by in the jungle, and it was not small in size. But Li Ming's attention was still focused on the red strange bird in the air. After all, the ground could not threaten Li Ming for the time being. As the bird approached, Li Ming narrowed his eyes and took a breath. He recognized this strange red bird. Blood coagulation beast. Li Ming whispered to himself. Li Ming had obtained the beast tribe illustrations, so he basically recognized beasts and insects. The reason why he was surprised when he saw this bird was entirely because of the difference of this blood coagulation beast. Chapter 538, Level 2 Magical Beast. When he was still in the Milky Way, Li Ming had encountered a blood coagulation beast on an alien planet. Its size was much smaller than the one in front of him. The blood coagulation beast itself had no attack power, but it had high intelligence and consciousness. It could be said to be a spiritual civilization among the beasts. This beast was a single species, and there might be only one in a certain area or even on a planet. Because the existence of this beast was to control other beasts, or to assist a beast leader as a think tank, the blood coagulation beast was relatively rare. As it grew and advanced, its spiritual consciousness would also increase. Although it had no combat power, it could look down on the top of the beasts. The blood coagulation beast in front of him suddenly stopped 100 meters in front of Li Ming, and kept looking at Li Ming with a pair of eyes. Li Ming also narrowed his eyes slightly. What the beast was thinking in his mind was already under Li Ming's control. The blood coagulation beast, which was originally aggressive, seemed to have noticed something strange when it saw Li Ming. It frowned slightly, roared a few times, and said, "Are you going to follow me obediently, or do I have to do it?" Li Ming did not understand the beast language, but his consciousness could sense what the other party wanted to say. After a slight smile, he replied directly, "I don't want to cause trouble, and you better not mess with me. I came here completely out of necessity. If my spaceship had not been damaged, I would not want to stay here." Hearing this, the blood coagulation beast made a series of strange cries, as if it was mocking. After the cry, its eyes narrowed, and an order had been issued in the depths of its consciousness. Li Ming also noticed this order immediately. He quickly waved his arms, and golden light appeared on his body. Suddenly, there was a sizzling sound in the jungle below, followed by a series of swooshing electromagnetic waves. Li Ming had predicted these attacks, and the golden light of the magic shield was just in case. His body flashed quickly, and Li Ming dodged all the electromagnetic wave attacks underground. When the attack stopped, Li Ming looked at the blood coagulation beast with anger. Before Li Ming could do anything, a yellow flying beast suddenly flew over from the sky. This beast looked like a cheetah, but it had a pair of golden wings. When it flapped its wings, lightning flashed in its wings and crackled. Li Ming didn't care. Without waiting for the beast to be cautious, he waved his right hand and a beam of white light shot out from his palm. The white light was extremely fast and flashed by. The beast was also shocked, and quickly turned over to avoid it, as if rolling in the air, but its golden wings were still hit by the white light. Bang! A muffled sound was heard. The golden wings were strong. Under the white light, only a few golden feathers fell off, and there was nothing unusual. However, the flying leopard beast did not dare to approach easily. Li Ming's casual attack made the ferocious flying leopard beast dare not approach, which surprised the blood coagulation beast. The look in his eyes, when he looked at Li Ming, also changed slightly. Li Ming snorted and said, "I'll say it again, we'd better not interfere with each other. Don't provoke me, otherwise, the consequences will be very serious." The blood coagulation beast suddenly became angry at this time, revealing sharp teeth in its slightly opened mouth, and bloodshot eyes. It seems that you don't know how powerful the Sirius beast tribe is. The blood coagulation beast glared at Li Ming, emitting a series of low hawk signals, and at the same time, the consciousness in his brain began to change slightly. Li Ming's eyes narrowed slightly, and his brows wrinkled slightly. From that consciousness, Li Ming did realize that something was not good. After a moment, the blood coagulation beast suddenly roared to the sky, like singing, and the sound was piercing. After the sound, the monsters below that sprayed electromagnetic waves quickly evacuated, and even the flying leopard that had just attacked Li Ming turned around and fled to the distance. These beasts fled in panic as if something terrifying was about to come. Li Ming had not yet noticed the abnormal breath, but he had already felt a little bit of bad. His eyes narrowed slightly, and his wisdom ability was activated. Just as Li Ming was looking around, a strong pressure suddenly came from above his head, like high pressure air, making his body tense. Li Ming looked up hastily and saw a black shadow swooping down from the sky. The appearance of this beast shocked Li Ming. He had not noticed it beforehand, and now he could not dodge it. He clenched his right hand tightly, and his entire fist was immediately wrapped in white light. He punched the top of his head, but just as Li Ming blocked the punch, the black shadow suddenly disappeared with a buzz. This startled Li Ming. He saw that the opponent's claws were about to reach him and collide with his fist, but in the blink of an eye, there was no trace. The next moment, a black shadow suddenly flashed to the side of Li Ming's body, and the monster kicked Li Ming sideways. Bang! A muffled sound was heard, and the black monster's kick hit the golden magic shield on Li Ming's body, and Li Ming's body flew sideways. After flying only a few dozen meters, the body hit an object with a snap. Li Ming looked around, and found nothing around. Looking at the magic shield again, there were more than a dozen cracks on the golden light, which made Li Ming's face change slightly. He looked up at the black monster in the distance. The monster was black in color, more than 3 meters tall, and similar to humans from alien space. It had slender ears, a pair of bat wings on its back, and hard animal limbs with only 2 fingers. However, this black monster was at level 2. After a casual check, Li Ming also found the origin of this beast in his consciousness. Warcraft. Fairy bat. Li Ming said with his teeth clenched. Fairy bat is a superior species among Warcraft. The origin of its bloodline is Warcraft, not a mutation. It is extremely fast and has strong attack. Most importantly, this beast has dark attributes. Looking at such a powerful Warcraft, Li Ming immediately tensed up his expression, but at this moment, electric arcs suddenly jumped around him, and the air began to turn blood red. Li Ming was a little surprised by such a strange phenomenon. Just as Li Ming was about to do something, a soft thing suddenly wrapped around Li Ming's magic shield. The color of the mouth became darker and darker, and it was completely isolated from the outside. Then 2 rows of sharp teeth appeared on the upper left and upper right. Could it be? Li Ming seemed to have thought of something. The fact was, just as Li Ming imagined, Li Ming was in the mouth of Magic Beast at this moment. This magic beast has the ability to be absolutely invisible, and Li Ming was concentrating on watching Fairy Bat just now, so he didn't notice his surroundings. From the outside, a huge magic beast with a dinosaur-like appearance gradually appeared from the air. Now it was too late to realize that it was in the opponent's mouth, but Li Ming immediately guessed the origin of this beast and whispered softly, "The only one who can do this is Li Yi, who is also a superior magic beast." Li Yi beast is huge, more than 10 meters tall, looks a bit like a dinosaur, is good at hiding, and has thunder attributes. Although its attack power is strong, it moves slowly, and invisibility is its main means of attack. Even though he was in the opponent's mouth, Li Ming was still not worried. He slowly raised his right hand, and a ball of green light appeared in his palm. With a casual slap, Li Ming's palm directly slapped the soft substance wrapped around Li Ming in Li Yiman's mouth. Bang! A muffled sound was heard, and vines suddenly burst out of Li Yiman's mouth. Li Yi only felt a strange feeling in his mouth, and the uncontrollable vines overflowed from his mouth crazily, making Li Yi feel like vomiting. The vines that flowed out of the mouth then rolled and entangled, growing around Li Yiman's body and completely wrapping Li Yi's body. Li Ming jumped out of it with a flying body. Li Yi, who was also a second level monster, seemed to be played by Li Ming, and immediately showed anger in his eyes, but that look quickly disappeared in the dense vines. Hateful human. A rough voice came out of Li Yi's consciousness, and the next moment, Li Yi's whole body suddenly flashed, shining with light, and white electric current flashed crazily, as if Li Yi was a power generation device, and the current radiated through the vines. Li Ming narrowed his eyes and watched intently, his body retreating far away. After the current passed, all the vines suddenly shrank and dried up, just like being burned by fire. In just a few seconds, the vines fell off Li Yi's body one by one, and fell to the ground. Chapter 539, Teoti. Li Ming re-examined the two beasts in front of him. Whether it was Fenibat or Li Yi, they were both top-class magical beasts, and their own strength was self-evident. Moreover, these two beasts were already level 2 magical beasts. From the perspective of civilized creatures, it was difficult for a level 2 civilization to defeat a level 2 magical beast. On Sirius, Li Ming did not want to be torn apart by his eyes and hands, so he turned his eyes and looked at the blood coagulation beast in the distance. It seems that, as long as I kill this beast, everything will be over, Li Ming thought to himself, and had already made a decision. However, Fenibat and Li Yi had already stared at Li Ming closely at this time. Looking at the two magical beasts, Li Ming snorted at the corners of his mouth, and his body suddenly moved, heading straight for the two beasts. Li Ming took the initiative to attack, which seemed to be exactly what the two beasts wanted. Among them, Fenibat opened his mouth and revealed a mouthful of fangs, making a strange cry, as if he was laughing triumphantly. He saw his body move, and naturally came to meet Li Ming. The two flew in opposite directions, and they were close to each other in a flash. Fei Fu's clenched fist mashed towards Li Ming, and Li Ming's right hand flashed with white light, and the light blade was already in his hand. But just as the two were about to collide and fight, Li Ming suddenly flashed again, and disappeared on the spot. Fei Fu's attack missed, and he was stunned. This expression was similar to the one Li Ming had just fought with him, but this time Li Ming took the initiative and used the same method. Instant light slash. Li Ming's figure appeared again, and was actually above the blood coagulation beast. The blood coagulation beast didn't even react to this sudden appearance. Snap. A white light flashed, and the light blade directly chopped off the blood coagulation beast's head. Red blood gushed out from the neck, and the body slowly fell to the ground. This move was quick and neat. When Fei Fu and Li Yi saw it, the blood coagulation beast had already fallen into the jungle below with its head and body separated. Actually killed. The military advisor? Fei Fu and Li Yi were stunned. The eyes of the two beasts were wide open, their expressions were stiff, and beads of sweat were dripping from their heads. The thing that frightened the second level monster still happened. The trembling mouths could not close for a long time, as if the two beasts could not believe what they saw. Li Ming smiled proudly from a distance, but when he saw the expressions of the two beasts, Li Ming's smile immediately stopped, and his brows slightly frowned. What's wrong with these two beasts? They just killed the blood coagulation beast. Li Ming looked puzzled. From the expressions of fear of the two beasts, it seemed as if something big had happened. The blood coagulation beast is a commanding type. With its presence, the battle of the beast tribe will be more powerful. This is also the reason why Li Ming killed it. Otherwise, if the two second level monsters cooperated, Li Ming might have to work harder. Looking at the two beasts in a daze, Li Ming was a little puzzled, but after a moment, the ground suddenly shook slightly, as if there was an earthquake, and then the chaotic sound of chirping, humming, and buzzing came from all directions. The shaking ground, coupled with the noisy sound, immediately gave Li Ming a bad feeling. Li Ming looked around and saw that the sky in the distance was densely packed, like a beehive. A large number of flying beasts were approaching this side. The number was almost impossible to describe with numbers. Seeing this scene, Li Ming's expression immediately froze. There was no doubt that this number of magic beasts, even if they were low level, could not compete. And this was only in the air. The ground was even more dusty and smoky. A group of shadows rushed here from the jungle like a flood. This scene, this battle, made Li Ming see despair and endless terror in an instant. This TMD is, Li Ming whispered with trembling lips. Not only Li Ming, but also the two beasts on the opposite side were trembling with fear. Fei Fu was already stuttering and unable to speak. Li suddenly turned his gaze to another direction and said in a trembling voice, "It still came out, boss." Bang bang bang, heavy footsteps came little by little, and a figure more than 30 meters tall walked among the beasts. Because of its huge size, it was very conspicuous. Li Ming now had no way to go up or down, and was surrounded by heavy enemies. He could only stand quietly in the same place. In just a moment, the beasts were within 1,000 meters of Li Ming, but strangely, all the beasts stopped at the same time. One of the beasts slowly retreated and made way, and the huge monster walked out slowly. At this time, its true appearance could be seen clearly. This beast looks like a human, with a head like an evil ghost. It has a huge mouth and exposed fangs, and two horns on its head. It has claws of the same level, only 4 toes on its feet, and its body surface is covered with scales. After walking out of the beast group, it came to 100 meters in front of Li Ming. At this time, Li Ming recognized the other party immediately. According to the records of the beast tribe illustrations, among the magic beasts in the universe, there are rarer existences than the superior magic beasts. The ancient magic beasts are not mutated, but the original gene mutation. The growth process is continuous mutation, without external interference. This beast is called Teoti. Li Ming cannot sense the level of the other party, so it is naturally beyond the second level magic beast. On the shoulders of this beast, there are 3 more magic beasts, all of which are second level magic beasts, belonging to the superior magic beasts, and the same level as Li bats. When such a powerful magic beast appeared, Li Ming felt in his heart that there was only one word, a narrow escape. "It seems that you killed the military advisor." Teoti opened his mouth slightly and said coldly. Li Ming just stayed where he was cautiously, motionless, and said nothing. But Li Ming could not sit and wait for death. Even if there was only a slight chance, Li Ming would try. Maybe this is something that life has, the desire to survive. Teoti looked at Li Ming coldly, but he didn't seem to have any intention of attacking. He glanced at his left shoulder and said, "I thought the attack of civilized creatures had begun, but it turned out to be just a little devil. Kill him." As he said this, a magic beast on Teoti's shoulder suddenly flapped its wings. This beast had no palms, only wings, and its 2 feet were only 1 foot long. Not enough to attack, but it had 3 tails, and each of them had different colors. It was a 3-tailed Yuank. After receiving Teoti's order, Yuank made a low and sharp sound, and its eyes immediately locked onto Li Ming. At this time, Fei Fu and Li on the field also looked at Li Ming, as if they were going to attack with 3 hands at the same time. Li Ming turned his eyes and looked at the 3 beasts, frowning slightly. 3 level 2 magic beasts were not something Li Ming could handle, but even a level 2 magic beast would give Li Ming a headache. Looking at the Teoti again, he couldn't even sense the opponent's level. His eyes slowly closed, his consciousness reverberating in his mind. Li Ming whispered, "Maybe, this time it's really over. You guys just accept your fate. If anything happens to me, you remember to run for your lives." The words of consciousness echoed in Heng Yunshang, and a moment later, a muffled sound of bang was heard, and a cloud of thick smoke burst out, covering the area of dozens of meters in just a moment. And the fog continued to spread. Looking at the fog in front of them, the faces of the 3 beasts changed slightly, not knowing why, and even the Teoti in the distance showed a puzzled expression. A moment later, a figure whooshed out of the fog and stopped above the fog, as if stepping on the clouds. Looking at the Teoti with narrowed eyes, Li Ming's body surface was already burning with blue phantom flames. Teoti did not move, and his eyes did not seem to take Li Ming into consideration, but he looked at the mist with some interest. He snorted and whispered, "Do it." As soon as he finished speaking, the 3 beasts flew and rushed towards Li Ming, but Li Ming did not move and only focused his attention on Teoti. Before the 3 beasts really approached, the mist suddenly swept and completely engulfed the 3 beasts. Teoti's face changed slightly, and his brows frowned slightly. He thought to himself, this ability, could it be? Thinking of this, his eyes returned to Li Ming. Li Ming's right hand was already flashing with black light, and a strange dark energy was already circulating in his palm. Facing such a powerful enemy, Li Ming had to use his strongest moves. Not to mention that there were 2 level 2 magic beasts on Teotihuacan's shoulders that had not yet taken action. Thinking of this, Li Ming suddenly leaned over and slapped the air downward. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 540, Terrifying Strength. Elemental summons. Black light flashed, and the strange characters appeared again. A huge character appeared in the void under Li Ming's feet, and then the characters turned into beams of light, and flew to the sky above Li Ming's head. A black sphere slowly formed. After a few seconds, the black sphere broke apart bit by bit like an eggshell, and a blue figure appeared. It was Li Ming who summoned the elemental life from another world. As soon as he sensed the blue light man, Teotihuacan's brows tightened, and his expression became solemn. At this moment, the other 2 level 2 magic beasts sitting on Teotihuacan's shoulders were also startled. The blue light man's powerful energy aura spread out in all directions. Li Ming still leaned over the ground, frowning, and whispered, "The combat power obtained by consuming my own energy is just to survive." But the blue light man's powerful aura spread out again in the form of ripples, and suddenly those densely packed magic beasts farther away made a chirping sound, which was shocked by this aura. Seeing this, Teotihuacan's relaxed expression tightened, and he whispered, "It has already affected the herd, so I'll do it." As soon as he finished speaking, the monsters on Teotihuacan's shoulders shot out, and Teotihuacan moved and rushed straight towards Li Ming. Before Teotihuacan could get close, the blue light man's figure disappeared in a flash, and when he reappeared, he was in front of Teotihuacan, and his clenched fist went straight to Teotihuacan's face. Teotihuacan frowned, and his huge palm clenched his fist to meet him. Bang! Teotihuacan's fist collided with the blue light man's fist. In terms of size, Teotihuacan's fist was larger than the blue light man's body, but the blue light man's fist blocked Teotihuacan's fist. But energy ripples spread out. It spread out like a shockwave. At this moment, Li Ming stared at the 2 level 2 monsters flying towards him, and suddenly put his hands together, and clapped them vigorously. With a light snap, Li Ming's body energy flipped, and he whispered, "The power of the Beast King." Suddenly, a huge shadow suddenly appeared in the air around Li Ming. The shadow looked like an altar. Behind Li Ming's body was a hand, with a ferocious face and an open mouth. And under Li Ming's feet was the shadow altar. As soon as the altar appeared, the 2 beasts were startled, as if they had seen something terrible, and their bodies froze in place. Then the altar flashed with blue light, and 2 chains flew out. The chains were also in a shadow state. As soon as they flew out, they entangled the 2 beasts in the air. The Beast King altar is a beast taming secret book that Li Ming had practiced before. It is a relic of the geocentric civilization, and comes from the end of the beast tribe illustration. Although he practiced this star book, Li Ming has only used it once. This is the second time. The 2 level 2 magic beasts in front of him are both high-grade magic beasts. Li Ming has identified them through the illustration. One looks like a bear, with a light blue body, and is heavy weapon. The other alien looks like a deer, named Silent Dance. However, at this moment, it has been firmly controlled by Li Ming, but Li Ming is also completely restricted and cannot move at all. At this moment, a fierce battle is also taking place in the mist under Li Ming's feet. Moore sat on the fox beast and dealt with the 3-tailed magpie. "Brother, this guy doesn't have as many tails as you. Kill him," Moore said viciously. But the fox beast, which is only level 1.8, knows that the 3-tailed magpie in front of him is not easy to deal with. The magic horned golden fungus beast was still entangled with Walker. The 2 guys were dealing with Fairy Bat. Their equally agile bodies and powerful attacks made the battle between the 2 men tense and exciting. As for the giant beast Lei, Zilin was responsible for dealing with it. The battle was carried out in the fog, which was a great advantage for the 5 pet beasts, but it was much more difficult for the 3 level 2 magic beasts. Fortunately, the 3 level 2 magic beasts were powerful, and they were not at all inferior. The fog sometimes flashed with light, sometimes emitted strong shock waves, and the rumbling sound was endless. The battle was extremely fierce. Li Ming only used the power of the Beast King to restrain the 2 level 2 magic beasts, and they could not move for a while. The ability of the Beast King Star is to seal the consciousness of the magic beast, but Li Ming cannot do that now, not to mention that the opponent is still 2 level 2 magic beasts, so it is even more difficult. The battle situation entered a stalemate, but the only thing that can break this balance is the blue light man. Li Ming looked at the place where the blue light people were fighting. His expression was unusually solemn, and he thought to himself, if the elemental life fails, Li Ming's inner worries are self-evident, and the thing that Li Ming is most worried about is also happening. As an elemental life, the blue light people are undoubtedly strong. They have helped Li Ming kill 3 second-level civilizations in one fell swoop, but facing the Teoti, the blue light people seem to be inferior. Various sharp attacks kept flashing under the blue light, but after a series of attacks, a lot of energy was consumed, but it could not do anything to the Teoti. The huge body of the Teoti also showed its powerful defense. He looked at the blue light people coldly and said, "You are not weak. Since I arrived at the Virgo galaxy cluster, you are the first guy who forced me to use tricks." Tricks? Li Ming's face changed, his eyes widened a little, and sweat beads kept flowing from his parents. In Li Ming's cognition, only biological civilizations can use tricks, because this is derived from the cultivation and inheritance of star nationality, but it is rare for Warcraft to use tricks. Most of the attacks of the monsters are derived from their own abilities after mutation, but these cannot be called tricks, because this is the essence of the monster's attacks. If it is a trick, it will inevitably produce extraordinary abilities. The 2 huge claws of Teoti slowly opened, and a mouth slightly opened, whispering, "Dream-devouring field." As soon as the voice fell, red light flashed between the 2 hands, and then a red barrier was formed in front of the hands. The red light was released from the palms of the 2 claws, and then formed a semicircular barrier in an arc. The whole barrier was like a big pot on the ground, covering the entire area covered by the fog. Li Ming gritted his teeth and looked up with his eyes slightly narrowed. The red barrier was indeed very strange and different from all the barriers Li Ming had encountered before. While Li Ming was watching, the corners of Teoti's mouth suddenly raised slightly and whispered, "Let's end it." Buzz. The huge red barrier suddenly shrank, just like the air in a balloon was suddenly released, and the red barrier shrank and disappeared. During the contraction process, the barrier swept through the bodies of all the living things inside like a big net. Under this attack, the blue light man disappeared with a bang, and the other beasts looked dazed, as if their souls had been taken away, and their whole bodies were stiff. The large area of fog that originally existed was shrinking little by little at this moment, and finally turned into a small ball of fog. The 5 pet beasts all stood still, as if they were all dead at once. However, Moore, who was lying next to the fox beast, blinked his eyes, glanced around, and after looking at his companions who were all standing still, he closed his eyes again, and said to himself, "I hope they don't find me. I hope they don't find me." The Beast King also disappeared in an instant, but Li Ming did not experience much abnormality. The blue shadow flame continued to burn on Li Ming's body. Teoti was shocked when he saw this, showing a look of surprise. Li Ming also realized it later. The red barrier just now was a mental consciousness attack. Li Ming, who had wisdom and intelligence, was naturally not affected. But looking down, the 5 pet beasts had fallen to the ground unconscious. The attack of the red barrier seemed indiscriminate, but the 5 level 2 monsters were safe and sound. As a result, Li Ming once again had to fight alone. Teoti was also surprised when he looked at Li Ming, but the look in his eyes when he looked at Li Ming also changed subtly, as if he was thinking about something. After a moment, Teoti snorted, turned his gaze, looked at the 5 pet beasts on the ground, and whispered, "Then let's deal with all the ones on the ground first." As soon as the voice fell, Li, who was closest to the 5 pet beasts, suddenly had a flash of lightning on his body and ran straight to Walker, who was not far away. Without waiting for the other party to get close, Li Ming's figure suddenly flashed in front of Li. Li didn't care. He opened his mouth, and a bolt of lightning spurted out of his mouth. Crack. With a loud thunder, the lightning hit Li Ming's body, but fortunately, there was a magic shield of golden light on Li Ming's body. Chapter 541, Beast Tribe Military Advisor. Li Ming was not injured by the lightning, but the golden light was flickering. Li Ming did not dare to stay and did not care about himself. He jumped to Walker's side, intending to put Walker into Hingayan Shang. But before Li Ming could do anything, a black figure suddenly flashed, and Fairy Bat actually came to Walker's side first. However, Fairy Bat did not attack Walker, but smiled coldly at Li Ming, and kicked him fiercely. Go to hell. Bang. Fairy Bat's kick hit Li Ming right in the middle, and the already weak golden light of the magic shield shattered with a snap sound. The kick also kicked Li Ming's head heavily. Swoosh. Li Ming shot out like a bullet, and the trees along the way were all broken by the impact of Li Ming's body until it hit the rocks in the distance and stopped with a boom. The rock was smashed to pieces, smoke and dust flew everywhere, and Li Ming felt a sharp pain in his head, blood slowly flowing down his head. Li Ming clenched his teeth tightly and stood up again. Damn it. What should I do now? Li Ming, who had just stood up, was not abnormal. His forced body still withstood the blow. Even though blood was flowing, it did not affect Li Ming's fighting ability. Fei Fu looked at Li Ming, who stood up again in the distance, showing a trace of abnormality, snorted and ignored it, and turned his eyes to Walker below. Wait. Li Ming suddenly shouted loudly, and his colleague turned around and flew over. Hearing this, Teoti's eyes also turned over, and looked at Li Ming with contempt. Fei Fu also subconsciously did not continue to attack, and couldn't help but glanced at Teoti, as if to confirm Teoti's intention again. Teoti did not respond, but just looked at Li Ming. Li Ming was a little surprised when the other party stopped attacking, and quickly continued, I can help you. I can stand on your side. Oh. Teoti turned around and looked at Li Ming directly, with a disdainful smile on his lips, and said, I have been in Penelope for so many years. When have I ever needed help from civilized creatures? You are afraid of death, little boy. Li Ming did not respond directly, but continued, you have been in the Penelope galaxy for a long time, but the attacks between the orcs and the Zergon civilized creatures have never been successful. These words seemed to hit the pain point of Teoti, and the look in his eyes when he looked at Li Ming immediately changed slightly. Li Ming was naturally aware of this change, and hurriedly said again, every invasion of civilized creatures will fail. Don't you want to know the reason? Teoti listened carefully, but soon he laughed strangely and said, it seems that, as long as they can survive, civilized creatures can do anything. Do you have to tell me about betraying your race? But I'm not interested. Besides, even if you tell me, I won't let you go. It's just, you can live a few more words. Teoti said coldly. Li Ming's expression did not change. He thought quickly in his mind, and did not reply immediately. Seeing this, Teoti slowly grinned, revealing his teeth, and said, it seems that you have given up on living this little longer. Li Ming still had a serious expression, and suddenly replied, civilized creatures will jointly attack Sirius at a specific time. The purpose is to weaken the Zerg's mother nucleus. This is the reason for your failure. Huh. Teoti was a little surprised to hear this. After nodding slightly, he seemed to acknowledge Li Ming's information, but then said, if you say a little more, you can live a few more seconds. Once what you say is worthless, you will die immediately. Li Ming remained calm, as if he had some ideas in his mind, and continued, if you want to invade the world of civilized creatures, you need to understand the strategic layout of civilized creatures in detail, otherwise, all attacks will be in vain. Teoti listened and continued to nod, but he showed displeasure. So, you killed my military advisor? Li Ming paused after hearing this, but soon nodded. Seeing Li Ming nod, Teoti suddenly became furious, and suddenly raised his huge arm, ready to slap Li Ming to death. The wisdom of the blood coagulation beast is limited. It can control the beast group, but strategically, it will only make stupid decisions. Its death has reduced unnecessary casualties among the beasts of the entire Penelope galaxy. Li Ming's eyes suddenly became firm, and he looked at Teoti and said so. Teoti's palm, which was about to slap, slowly withdrew at this time, and his eyes continued to stare at Li Ming. Li Ming hesitated for a while, and said, so, let me be the military advisor of the beasts. The voice of this sentence was not loud, but all the monsters present heard it, and Teoti also paused slightly. The atmosphere of the scene immediately solidified. Teoti looked at Li Ming quietly. After hesitating for a moment, he laughed coldly again and whispered, being the military advisor of the beast tribe is interesting. As soon as the voice fell, Fenny Bat suddenly flew up slowly and said, "Let a civilized creature be our military advisor. Is this a joke too big? Ha ha ha." The other beasts also laughed coldly, and the voice was full of disdain and even disregard. Li Ming glanced at this and said again, "If possible, I hope you can give me a chance. I will guide the beast tribe to win the war." Teoti said nothing, just looked at Li Ming coldly, and waved his right hand behind him twice, and the group of magic beasts that originally surrounded this place began to slowly fade away. Li Ming, who saw this scene, breathed a sigh of relief. Teoti turned his eyes and looked at the 5 pet beasts on the ground not far away, and said, "Lei, find these guys and lock them up." Lei paused, but replied with a slight hesitation, "Yes." Li Ming looked over and saw Lei taking all 5 pet beasts away one by one. Teoti leaned down, stared at Li Ming, and said, "I can give you a chance, but if you fail, your companions will be dead." As he spoke, he glanced at Li Ming coldly. When Teoti ordered the killing of the pet beasts just now, he noticed that Li Ming was trying his best to protect these pet beasts, and that was why he was hit by Fenny Fu's kick. At this time, these 5 pet beasts can just be used as hostages. After all, the beast tribe really needs a military advisor now. After saying this, Teoti stood up again, turned around and strode away from here. After a while, Li Ming followed Teoti to the headquarters of the beast tribe, a huge underground cave. This place is like an underground world. Although there are monsters everywhere, it is well organized. Each monster has its own responsibilities and is busy with its own things. The empty underground world is full of monsters. The figure of Li Ming, a civilized creature, also attracted the attention of many monsters. Some were angry, some were curious, and some were surprised, just like looking at a monster. But Li Ming remained calm and ignored all of this. Continue to move forward. After crossing the empty square, a blue portal appeared in front of you. Li Ming frowned after just one look, showing surprise, and thought to himself, the beast tribe also has a portal, so, is it developing into a civilized creature? That's right, humans are still evolved from monkeys, but this beast tribe. Li Ming whispered in his mind, and his expression on his face remained calm. After passing through the portal, we came to this independent cave. Although the space here is isolated from the outside, it is still very spacious. In the middle of the cave is a blue round object. This object is extremely huge, and the surface is flashing with blue light, which is extremely strange. The huge figure of Teoti came to the side of the spherical object in a year and said, "Here is all the information about the beast tribe. I hope you can give me a plan as soon as possible." While speaking, Teoti's eyes turned to look at Li Ming. Li Ming said nothing, and looked at the blue glowing object in front of him quietly. Teoti then turned around and prepared to leave here, but when he reached the door, he suddenly stopped and said, "Yuan, Fenny Fu, Chang Wu, from now on, Li Ming is our military advisor. The 3 of you and your beasts must obey his command until the end of this war." After saying this, Teoti really left, and in the cave in front of him, only Li Ming and the 3 beasts were left. Chapter 542, Beast Core. What Teoti said just now was meant for Li Ming to hear, and of course for the 3 beasts to hear, but the information heard by each person was completely different. In Li Ming's opinion, this Wu had already begun to try Li Ming, but the conditions were very harsh. As for the 3 beasts, Teoti's implication was to emphasize that they should keep a close eye on Li Ming, so that Li Ming would not do anything that would be detrimental to the beasts. Li Ming was now looking at the blue sphere in front of him with full concentration, and his understanding of the beasts was naturally crucial. He slowly raised his right hand, pointed his fingertips at the blue sphere and lightly tapped it, and a green light shot out from his fingertips and entered it. The green light was Li Ming's consciousness. As the green light entered, Li Ming's brows tightened, and his face changed slightly, because that consciousness seemed to have entered a world of the beasts. At this time, Li Ming finally knew what the blue sphere in front of him was. The Zerg had a worm core, and the beasts actually had a beast core. Li Ming didn't know the function of this kind of object before, but now he understood it. The role of the beast core is the same as that of the insect core. It is the central brain of a tribe. How to control the information of each member of the tribe at any time and make use of it depends on this core item. All monsters with combat capabilities need to inject a small part of their consciousness into the beast core, just like identity registration, but the beast core has a more powerful ability, which is to connect the consciousness of the registered monsters to the beast core, and then directly control it by the top. Only Teoti has absolute control over the beast core. Through the beast core, Teoti can control the entire beast group, but in addition to absolute control, there is also branch control, but the number of beast groups that can be controlled by the top members below Teoti will become less and less. Below Teoti is the military advisor, and below the military advisor is the upper level monster. Each upper level monster can control a certain number of monsters. According to what Teoti said just now, Li Ming can only use 3 upper level monsters. After understanding this mechanism, Li Ming also understood his rights. Now Li Ming has no selfishness, because the 5 pet beasts are still in the hands of Teoti. Li Ming needs to win a battle, win the trust of Teoti, and then wait for an opportunity to rescue the 5 pet beasts. The continent of Sirius is divided into 2 large areas, one is controlled by the beast tribe led by Teoti, and the other is the area controlled by the Zerg. It records a plan to attack civilized creatures. It is not easy for the 2 tribes to plunder the resources of civilized creatures. The most important part is how to reach the galaxy where civilized creatures are located. This is also a problem that bothers Li Ming, because civilized creatures have spaceships and can be teleported by flight, but how can the Zerg and the beast leave the planet? Continuing to read the content inside, Li Ming's cognition was gradually refreshed, and a lot of information about the Zerg and the beast also emerged little by little. Among the Zerg and the beast, there is a species with time and space capabilities. This species is huge and has time and space capabilities, so it can carry a large number of tribes for long distance combat. Of course, this kind of species is very rare, and its original purpose was to migrate, but as it became stronger, it became an attack. On Sirius, there is no such beast among the subordinates of Teoti, but there is this species among the Zerg. Therefore, every attack must rely on the Zerg. Among the Zerg, there is a species called Filthy Shadow Worm that has this ability, so it is also the main vehicle for attacking civilized creatures, without a doubt. This kind of vehicle is not like the spaceship of civilized creatures, which can be built at any time. The Filthy Shadow Worm can only be used after it is bred, cultivated, and grown up, and this cycle is a reason why the Zerg cannot launch an attack. Before this, Li Ming learned from flowers that the secondary civilizations of the 5 major galaxies would enter Sirius at a certain interval to weaken the insect core. Before, Li Ming did not know the function of the insect core, so he did not understand the reason. Now that Li Ming knows its effectiveness, he understands the importance of this behavior. The so-called weakening of the insect core is to use external forces to interfere with the consciousness connection of the insect core to the filthy shadow charn. Because all the group consciousness information needs to be registered in the insect core, the so-called weakening is to reduce the information of the shadow insects, which will reduce the number of Zerg attacks. Whether it is the insect core or the beast core, there is a huge amount of information stored in it. After all, the number of the 2 groups is astonishing. Such a huge amount of information is difficult to control without a strong spiritual civilization. At this time, the importance of the military advisor is self-evident. Seeing this, Li Ming withdrew his consciousness from it, his eyes sank slightly, and he fell into deep thought. Looking at Li Ming motionless for a long time, Fenny Bat, one of the 3 beasts on the side, smiled disdainfully and whispered, "I never believe that civilized creatures can help us, so I'm ready to kill him at any time." Chang Wu turned his head slightly when he heard this, looked at Fenny Bat, and whispered in a dull voice, "This is the boss's decision. Are you questioning the boss?" Fenny Bat was startled and didn't say anything more. Li Ming, who was standing by, heard everything clearly, but his face showed no expression. He just turned around and said, "Take me to see the boss." Li Ming's expression was extremely serious and indifferent, and he didn't take the 3 monsters in front of him seriously. Facing such a Li Ming, Fenny Fu snorted coldly and said nothing. Yuan just closed his eyes slightly, as if he didn't hear anything. The sturdy Chang Wu shook his head and said, "Come with me." Chang Wu was in front, and Li Ming was behind, ignoring the other 2 beasts. After walking out of the portal and returning to the hall just now, there were still monsters everywhere, and Li Ming still attracted the attention of these monsters, but these monsters just watched from a distance and didn't dare to make any moves, because what they feared was not Li Ming, but the three superior monsters. Under the leadership of Zhang Wu, Li Ming came to a wide platform. The rocks here were scattered and arranged in an orderly manner, obviously after the monsters had rested. Like steps, they lead straight to the top, and at the top, Teoti is sitting on the ground with his eyes closed. After arriving at the steps a few dozen meters away from Teoti, Li Ming and the three monsters stopped. Teoti said without opening his eyes, "What? You have a plan so soon?" Li Ming smiled lightly and replied, "To show my sincerity, I decided to start a small-scale war now." Teoti suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Li Ming intently. After hesitating for a while, he said, "Now." Li Ming continued, "Do you want to hear my plan?" Teoti's expression relaxed, and he looked at Li Ming again, saying, "Then tell me." Li Ming smiled and turned his right hand. A metal ball appeared in his hand. The three monsters immediately shook with this sudden action, and they all took fighting postures. Li Ming rolled his eyes, glanced at the three beasts beside him, and then raised his hand to throw it. The metal ball flew into the air, and after a slight hum sound, the blue light spread out, and in the blink of an eye, a nebula map was formed, which was a space map. When Teoti saw this picture, his eyes widened, and he looked shocked, as if he had never seen such a nebula map before. This was normal, after all, it was a product of civilized creatures. The three monsters beside him were also stunned, and they didn't react for a long time. Li Ming didn't care. He raised his hand and a small area of the starry sky was enlarged. Here is the location of Sirius, and the large galaxies around are all the places where civilized creatures are, Li Ming said. Teoti was still immersed in the space map. After looking at it for a while, he said, "What's going on? This map." Li Ming smiled and continued, "This is my secret treasure as a military advisor." Teoti's expression relaxed after hearing this. His originally surprised expression immediately returned to normal. He looked at Li Ming coldly and said, "Tell me about your plan first." Li Ming continued, "This operation is my first operation. After becoming a military advisor, I don't need troops. I just need to helpers." Huh. Teoti frowned, opened his eyes wide, and showed an unbelievable expression. The three monsters standing next to Li Ming also looked at Li Ming in shock. Chapter 543, First Action. Li Ming truthfully described the detailed plan for the first action. According to Li Ming's plan, Li Ming would attack a small supply station accompanied by Zhang Wu and Zhuang. The target of the attack, the benefits after success, and the combat power that needed to be dispatched were all arranged by Li Ming. It wasn't Li Ming's clever arrangement and detailed explanation that Teoti still agreed to Li Ming's request for this attack. For Teoti, this is naturally worth a try, because in the past wars, the benefits were small and the sacrifices were very large. Every war would lose a large number of magic beasts, and Li Ming's plan only needed to level 2 magic beasts, and the benefits were also huge, which was naturally cost effective. But for Li Ming, this small scale action was extremely important. Once successful, Li Ming's prestige and status in the beast tribe would increase, and rescuing more and others would be smoother. The most important thing is that the attack in the Virgo galaxy cluster is incompatible with these aliens. Although they are both civilized creatures, they are strangers. Why not dance with insects and beasts? There are no large beasts with space-time abilities among the beast tribe, but there are small ones. Li Ming rode a small space-time beast, Time Snipe, on this trip. The Time Snipe beast is a flying beast, but it is completely different from ordinary flying beasts. The Time Snipe is only 20 meters long and 10 meters high. It is light yellow in color and looks like a bulging pufferfish. Its mouth can accommodate 5 people, and its wings can be retracted. When the wings are opened, they are more than 10 meters long, but when they are folded, they are like fish fins, only about 2 meters long. Even for daily flight, this beast does not need wings. Its bulging flesh and its innate unique energy body can resist gravity and achieve flight. Moreover, this beast has a rare ability to teleport through space and time, but it does not have an absolute sense of direction, which is not as good as large space-time beasts or space-time insects. At this time, 3 figures were flying in the sky, namely Li Ming, Changwu and Yuank. The direction of the three people was exactly the seaside. While flying, Changwu looked at Li Ming and said, "It's just the three of us, is it okay?" Li Ming smiled and looked back at Changwu, saying, "As your new military advisor, I will take you to understand the new war experience." Changwu heard this, his eyes were half believing and half doubting, but he didn't say anything more. Yuank on the side also rolled his eyes and looked at Li Ming, but didn't care. After flying for a while, the three people had arrived on a sea, and then slowly stopped. Changwu opened his mouth and a red light spurted out. The red beam flashed and disappeared into the sea. After a while, the sea water below began to churn, and then a huge figure emerged from the sea little by little. Just seeing the yellow back, Li Ming's eyes widened a little and whispered, "Time snipe." After a few seconds, the huge pale yellow figure slowly left the sea and flew into the air. The round eyes turned left and right, looked at the three people in front of him, and finally stopped at Li Ming, and then showed a puzzled look. Changwu then said, "This is the new military advisor. Follow his instructions." Shiwu was startled at first, but soon opened his mouth. The huge mouth was like a door. After it opened, Li Ming and the two beasts beside him entered it. After the three of them entered, the huge mouth slowly closed. There was a transparent space in Shiwu's mouth, and Li Ming and the two beasts just happened to enter it. Li Ming sat cross-legged on the ground and closed his eyes slightly. At the same time, Li Ming's consciousness turned into beams of green light and shot out from his body. This green light was exactly the orders issued by Li Ming. The green light flashed and disappeared in Shiwu's mouth. After receiving the order, Shiwu's eyes changed slightly, and the surface of his body flashed with arcs. It only took a few seconds for him to disappear on the spot with a bang. Based on the astronautical map, Li Ming constantly used his consciousness to guide the direction of Shiwu's transmission, just like navigation. Under Li Ming's guidance, Shiwu's transmission was getting closer and closer to the target, the supply star. The space map has accurate safety coordinates, which is crucial. The Beastman does not have such a thing, and a rash attack will naturally be very disadvantageous. The only trouble is that the time snipe is just a Beastman, without the superior operating system of the spacecraft, and only one command is enough to handle it. Even though the Beastman has many powerful second-level magic beasts, they are still too weak compared to the technological weapons of civilized creatures. However, if the Beastman and civilized creatures can confront each other head-on, the Beastman will have a very big advantage. The powerful body, overwhelming number, and unlimited destructive power and attack power enable the Beastman to exert powerful power in any environment. After being transmitted for most of the day, the time snipe has entered a star system, which is a star system on the edge of the Penelope Galaxy. This star system belongs to the Penelope Galaxy, but because of its edge location, it is basically controlled by civilized creatures. According to the information in Li Ming's space map, it can be clearly known that this is the springboard planet for civilized creatures to attack the Beastman. Continuing to transmit in the star system, not long after, a planet appeared in front of Shiwu. This planet was not big, but the surface of the planet was completely a natural scenery. Li Ming clearly saw the appearance of the planet in front of him through Shiwu's consciousness, and whispered, "This is it." As he said so, Shiwu began to approach the planet. There is only one base on the supply star, and the rest of the place is blank. There will be no residents here, only a small number of non-resident troops. Under the guidance of Li Ming, Shiwu chose a deserted place for landing transmission. Above a lake on the supply star, electric light flashed slightly, and a muffled sound of bang was heard, and Shiwu broke through the air. Although it was not as far away and fast as the spacecraft system, its flexibility was extremely fast. Arriving at the destination, Shiwu's mouth opened slightly, and a transparent bubble was spit out. In the bubble were Li Ming, Changwu and Yuank. With a light sound of pop, the bubble broke, and Shiwu turned around and dived into the lake below and disappeared. At this time, Yuank glanced at Li Ming and whispered, "Why in such a remote place? Didn't we say to attack their base?" Li Ming did not respond and flew away. Yuank frowned, looking unhappy, and Changwu followed Li Ming closely without saying a word. As he flew away, Li Ming said, "To deal with civilized creatures, we must use the methods of civilized creatures. There are only 3 of us. If we attack the base head-on, we will only be attacked by their weapons. This is very disadvantageous to us. You beastmen are used to attacking head on, but the gains are small and the losses will be great. As he said this, Li Ming's flying speed was already increasing bit by bit. Li Ming had no choice but to explain this. After all, violence and frontal attack were deeply rooted in the minds of the beastmen, and the tactics and strategies of civilized creatures could not be explained in a few words. But as long as he could make the beastmen taste the sweetness, Li Ming believed that he would win their trust. The three figures flew towards the depths of the jungle little by little, until they reached the top of a mountain and stopped. Standing on the top of the mountain, Li Ming narrowed his eyes and looked into the distance. Deep in the jungle, lights kept flashing under the dark night sky. It was the location of a base. Li Ming looked at the distance intently and leaned over to sit cross-legged. This move startled Changwu and Yuang, and they all looked at Li Ming, because according to the habit of the beast tribe, they would attack violently when they found the target, but they didn't expect Li Ming to sit down where he was. Changwu looked puzzled, looked at Li Ming, and then looked at Yuang. Yuang's wings flickered slightly, and he looked dissatisfied, saying, "What do you mean by this?" Li Ming did not respond immediately. He turned his right hand, and a green light flashed. A green dragon appeared in his palm, and then he threw it towards the sky, and the green dragon turned into a green light and shot out. At this time, Li Ming said, "Don't worry, wait for me to destroy their weapon system first." After saying this, Changwu and Yuang were stunned, and didn't say anything more, just accompanied Li Ming and waited quietly. King Long possesses a powerful consciousness. Under the control of his consciousness, Li Ming Zhu can paralyze all weapon systems and defense forces. Chapter 544 Return with a full load. After waiting for a while, Li Ming's eyes suddenly opened, and he stood up slowly from the ground and said, "Let's go, move." As soon as the voice fell, Li Ming's figure shot out with a whoosh. Changwu and Yuang had no idea what Li Ming had done, but at this moment they could only follow Li Ming to fly far away. After a few flashes, the three of them had arrived directly above the base, but it was quiet below, without any abnormality, as if they had entered a no man's land. His eyes turned and locked onto a rectangular single-story building. According to the information obtained by Li Ming Qinglong, this building was the location of the warehouse. "Follow me." Li Ming leaned over and rushed, and his figure flashed to the door of the building. The door of the building was originally guarded by soldiers, but at this moment they had all fainted. The door of the warehouse was a teleportation portal, and there was also a barrier. Li Ming stepped forward quickly, raised his hand and a green light shot out from his fingertips. A light buzzing sound was heard, and Li Ming smiled slightly, whispering, "Let's go." As soon as the voice fell, Li Ming entered the portal first, and Changwu looked at the soldier lying on the ground, then moved and followed Li Ming into it. Although Yuang also had a face full of doubt, he finally followed in. The blue light flashed, and when the three of them appeared again, they were already in a huge warehouse. The bright lights illuminated the entire warehouse, with rows of shelves, and all kinds of items. Changwu and Yuang were stunned, and after Li Ming noticed the expressions of the two beasts, he smiled slightly and said, "Let's do it, take away all the useful resources." Changwu and Yuang heard this, and naturally did not hesitate, and they flashed, and began to loot. Li Ming had no interest in everything here. Although there was a lot of energy here, most of them were weapons and equipment. Changwu and Yuang's main goal is the energy here. The two beasts are looting, and Li Ming has slowly come to a shelf. At this time, Li Ming is mainly waiting for the two to finish looting, but he accidentally glances and sees two large boxes. The two large boxes are made of metal, with complex runes on the surface. Li Ming narrowed his eyes slightly, his face changed slightly, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He whispered, "Metal capsules?" Li Ming has seen the technology of metal capsules before. This kind of item is a high-end technology product. It is small and easy to carry, and very practical. Through the observation of the wise eyes, Li Ming found that the properties of the capsules in the two metal boxes have been mastered. Some of the capsules here are spaceship capsules, and some are high explosive capsules. Li Ming naturally needs spaceship capsules very much, at least it can ensure that Li Ming can use them at any time. As for the high explosive capsule, it is a high energy bomb with extraordinary power. Seeing the two full boxes in front of him, Li Ming turned his palm, and a star bag appeared. Blue light flashed, and rays of light shot out of the star bag. Then the two large boxes of items were collected by Li Ming. After finishing all this, Li Ming continued to walk along the shelves. Apart from these capsule technologies, Li Ming did not find anything valuable. At this time, Chang Wu and Yuang flew over with excitement. The two beasts were excited and had already searched and cleaned up the valuable things in the entire warehouse. Li Ming looked up at the two and said, "Have you taken all the things you should take?" Chang Wu grinned and said, "I have never taken so many things so easily." Yuang did not complain at all at this moment. He looked very satisfied. Seeing this, Li Ming turned around and said, "Then let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, Li Ming took the lead to walk out. One person and two beasts easily passed through the portal. After coming out, they originally planned to leave directly, but Li Ming paused, and his eyes immediately looked somewhere. Chang Wu and Yuang realized it later, and then followed Li Ming's gaze and looked over. The direction Li Ming was looking at was at a story building next to the warehouse. The building was pitch black, and there was a road between it and the warehouse. There was nothing unusual. Chang Wu and Yuang could not see anything unusual, but just looked at Li Ming strangely. Li Ming looked coldly in that direction and said, "Come out." At this time, an alien in the dark of the warehouse wall was suddenly startled, with a look of horror on his face. His position was absolutely hidden, and he was hiding in a corner, so there was no reason to be discovered. "You actually found me." Thinking in his mind, the alien did not dare to stay there any longer. He moved and jumped to the top of the two-story building next to him. This alien was a 1.9 level civilization. As soon as he arrived at the top of the building, he looked at Li Ming and the two beasts beside him. Chang Wu saw this, opened his mouth, showing a fierce look, and his sharp teeth were exposed. Just as he was about to take action, Li Ming suddenly raised his hand to block him. Seeing this, Chang Wu's face changed, and he looked at Li Ming. Yuang also looked at Li Ming in astonishment. Although the two beasts didn't say a word, their eyes were very clear. At this time, Li Ming said, "Let me do it." As soon as the three words came out, the two beasts were shocked. Li Ming took 2 steps forward, staring at the alien on the roof, and his figure disappeared in a flash. This sudden disappearance made the alien on the roof change his face and frown. When he reacted, Li Ming had appeared behind him, and a white light blade had appeared on his shoulder. The alien's eyes widened a little, and his eyes looked at the light blade on his shoulder, and beads of sweat flowed down his forehead. "We are all civilized creatures. You are not really going to kill me for the beast tribe," the alien said in a trembling voice. Li Ming looked at the other party with contempt and replied, "Don't you think that the complex and ever-changing civilized world is more annoying? The simple and crude beasts don't have to worry about those. You." The alien gritted his teeth and was about to say something else when a white light flashed. Swoosh. The alien's head was directly cut off, and the headless body also fell on the roof with a thump. Chang Wu and Yuang saw this scene. After Li Ming finished doing this, he moved his body and flew to the opposite side of the two beasts and said, "Let's go." As he said this, Li Ming was about to turn around and leave, but just as he turned around, Li Ming's eyes suddenly looked at the location of the warehouse. He flipped his right hand and a metal capsule appeared in his hand. He threw it casually, and the capsule in his hand fell into the blue portal and disappeared. Boom. As soon as the three figures left, a violent explosion occurred behind them. With a flash of light, the shockwave spread out, and the entire warehouse instantly turned into a big pit. Seeing this, Chang Wu glanced at Li Ming and said, "What does this mean?" Li Ming looked ahead and flew away quickly. After hesitating for a while, he said, "There are weapons and equipment of civilized creatures inside. The function of this supply star is to gather before launching an attack on the beasts. This is the gathering place of civilized creatures. If you destroy this place, the beasts will delay the attack." Li Ming continued, "The beasts are non-civilized creatures. There is only one simple truth in the beast world, that is, survival. They cannot have strategic wisdom like civilized creatures, but the beasts' bodies and abilities are constantly improving during their evolution and development. It's like consciousness is guiding them. Only a strong enough body and attack power can survive better. But if there is a connection between civilized creatures and the beasts, then all this will change subtly. Li Ming and the two beasts returned to the lake where they had landed before. At this time, Changwu opened his mouth and sprayed towards the lake, and a red light shot into the lake. After a few seconds, the lake rolled, and the figure of Xiao appeared again. After the background ice swept over Li Ming and the two beasts, the mouth opened, and Li Ming and the two beasts flew into it without hesitation. After confirming that the three guys entered the mouth, the snipe's mouth slowly closed, and then the surface of the body flashed with lightning. After a few seconds, it disappeared from the spot with a bang. Under Li Ming's guidance, the snipe teleported to Sirius. This trip was a great success. The eyes of Changwu and Yuan looking at Li Ming had changed, and there was naturally more admiration in their eyes. Chapter 545 Trust. The beast tribe had always fought under the leadership of the blood coagulation beast, but they had never won so easily. Another point was that Li Ming personally slaughtered the aliens and blew up the base. These actions changed the views of Changwu and Yuan on him. After a long transmission, Xiao returned to Sirius under the guidance of Li Ming's consciousness. Above the jungle, electric arcs jumped in the air, and with a muffled sound of bang, Xiao's figure appeared. The huge mouth opened, and a transparent bubble was spit out. Then Xiao nodded and left. The bubble burst instantly, and Li Ming and the two beasts stopped in the air. At this time, the two beasts looked extremely proud, and were respectful to Li Ming. Li Ming smiled slightly and said, "Let's go and see Lord Teoti." As soon as the voice fell, Li Ming leaned over and flew to the jungle below. Back in the empty underground cave, this time Li Ming walked in front. Changwu and Yuan followed closely behind, and the surrounding monsters still cast strange looks at him. Huh? Didn't this guy go to attack the civilized biological base? Yes. How come he came back so soon? Look at the expressions of Lord Changwu and Lord Yuan. Could it be that the three of them? The chaotic roars of monsters continued to reach his ears, and the monsters were talking to each other. This was completely different from the way they looked at Li Ming before. But from the formation of Li Ming's return, this attack plan seemed to be smooth, because the results were clearly revealed in the expressions of Changwu and Yuan. Amid the noise, Li Ming came to the central altar of the underground cave. Teoti naturally knew about Li Ming's return in advance. After all, the communication ability of the beast tribe was still very strong. However, when he really saw Li Ming, Teoti still opened his eyes in disbelief, frowned slightly, and said, "It seems that this attack is particularly smooth." Li Ming smiled lightly and said nothing, while Changwu and Yuan beside him could not wait to take out the harvest results. The two beasts each held a star bag and bowed respectfully. Teoti glanced at it, stretched out his huge palm, took the two star bags in his hand, and smiled with satisfaction as soon as he sensed it. The energy of civilized creatures is really a good thing. Looking at the star bag in his hand, Teoti said with satisfaction, "As for energy, it is basically under the control of civilized creatures. From the power of nebula to the power of flowing clouds, and then to the power of moving clouds, they are all finished products of energy. In addition to these ways of energy gathering, energy will also exist in other ways, but it all depends on the needs of civilized creatures. Extracting energy from the universe and nature, and then changing the state of energy according to their own needs, and using it reasonably. This is civilized creatures. These are all things that non-civilized creatures do not have. Whether it is the orcs or the Zerg, they can only rely on natural energy to improve themselves. Simply put, biological civilizations can extract high-quality ores or liquids containing energy, and then use them, while the orcs and Zerg can only get infinitely close to these stones or liquids containing energy, to absorb them naturally bit by bit. In this way, it will become very difficult for the orcs to grow. However, some rare orc species have a more convenient way to obtain energy, that is, plundering. The benefits will be greater if the energy extracted by civilized creatures is plundered. Even if there are risks, it is worth the risk for the orcs and Zerg. Although the orcs and Zerg do not have the wisdom and technology of civilized creatures, they still have physical advantages. It is relatively troublesome for civilized creatures to advance, requiring auxiliary materials, energy synthesis products, and physical strengthening, while the orcs and Zerg only need enough energy to advance. This convenient way of advancement is an advantage for non-civilized creatures. Of course, the advantage is not only this. Non-civilized creatures are never picky about energy. Whether it is ordinary energy or special energy, it can promote their advancement, and special energy can also allow them to mutate and evolve. It can be said that non-civilized creatures are not picky about food, and any energy will help. This is like people and animals in the human world. Humans produce food, and animals will plunder human food when they are close to humans. This kind of plunder will develop and grow in the tribe. The only difference is that the beasts and insects in the universe have evolved for a long time, and they have understood the meaning of plunder. From beast cores to military advisors, they have all developed through a long evolution. Therefore, Teoti was extremely satisfied after seeing the energy in the star bag. Even though it was just an ordinary energy synthesis product, it was already very precious to the beasts. At this time, when he looked at Li Ming, his expression immediately softened, and he said, "I really didn't expect that you would actually help our beast tribe." Li Ming smiled and said nothing, but Chan Wu beside him said, "During this operation, our military advisor personally killed an alien and destroyed their base." Oh. Teoti showed an even more surprised look and looked at Li Ming as if he was looking at a treasure. Li Ming then said, "Since I have said that I will be the military advisor of the beast tribe, I will definitely fulfill my duties as a military advisor and serve the beast tribe." Teoti just nodded repeatedly with satisfaction, as if he really regarded Li Ming as a member of his tribe. After thinking for a while, Li Ming said, "For the beast tribe, this is just the beginning. What we are attacking is just a supply station. Next, I will lead the beast tribe to attack their headquarters." As soon as this sentence came out, Teoti's expression changed first. His eyes widened a little, and he seemed a little bit unbelievable. Although Chan Wu and Yuan had already tasted the sweetness, the two beasts' faces changed slightly when they mentioned attacking the headquarters of civilized creatures. At this time, they looked at Li Ming with surprise. Li Ming's words did not get an immediate response from Teoti, but instead received a hint of doubt. However, after taking a look at the star bag in his hand, Teoti still said, "Do you have any plan?" Li Ming nodded slightly and replied, "But before this plan is implemented, I still have to negotiate with the Zerg." Teoti paused after hearing this, and looked at Li Ming intently. Li Ming continued, "According to the information in the Beast Core, in the previous cooperation with the Zerg, because we needed the Zerg's dirty shadow as a vehicle for transmission, and we also had to pay energy to the Zerg, I was extremely dissatisfied with the previous plan. I think I need a brand new negotiation." Teoti became interested after hearing this, but his eyes were moving, as if he was thinking about something, as if he was a little hesitant. Seeing this, Li Ming continued, "My plan has a 90% success rate, and the benefits will be tens of thousands of times the benefits of this time." As soon as the final benefits were mentioned, Teoti immediately became energetic, his body shook, and his whole body moved uncontrollably. He gently moved his head close to Li Ming and said, "Will the benefits really be so high?" This question was naturally reasonable, because the benefits Li Ming mentioned were something that Chan Wu and Yuan dared not even think about. Li Ming looked confident and continued, "Of course, since I'm a military advisor, it will definitely bring huge benefits to the beast tribe." The energy obtained from the supply station was indeed not much for Li Ming. Perhaps this purity of energy was already a considerable amount for the beast tribe. So Li Ming proposed 10,000 times, which these beasts dared not even think about. However, there is one thing that is certain for the beast tribe, that is, as long as there is enough benefit, no matter how big the risk is, it can be considered. The reason why the beast tribe is afraid of the headquarters of biological civilization is that the biological civilization's attack weapons are too powerful. Not to mention the Zerg's shadow worm vehicle, even a comet will be destroyed. In a place like the headquarters planet, advanced radars and weapons are enough to prevent any enemy invasion. After some thought, Teoti suddenly stood up from his cross-legged position and said, "Since you already have a plan, let's reopen the negotiations with the Zerg." Li Ming said nothing, but he already had his own plan in mind. Although Li Ming has temporarily gained Teoti's trust, it is not yet time to save the 5 pet beasts, but Li Ming is also approaching this time step by step. After all, saving the 5 pet beasts first is the most important thing. Chapter 546, Zerg. Sirius, directly above the sea, Li Ming led Chan Wu and Yuan to fly to the other side of the sea. Across this sea is a Zerg continent. Li Ming was heading to the Zerg, but in the underground hall of the beast tribe, Teoti was looking at the 3 level 2 monsters in front of him with a thoughtful expression. In front of Teoti were Lei Yi, Fei Fu and Mo Wu. Teoti's eyes moved slightly and finally stopped on Lei Yi. After hesitating for a while, he asked, "How are those 5 guys?" Lei Yi immediately replied, "They have been locked up in the cell, nothing unusual." Teoti nodded slightly, looked at Fei Fu and Mo Wu, and said, "Tell me what you think of this military advisor from a civilized creature." As soon as this was said, Fei Fu stepped forward and said, "Civilized creatures can never be trusted. Although he attacked a small planet, but I suggest that Lord Teoti should not trust him too much." Teoti nodded slightly, but did not respond. At this time, Mo Wu shook the horns on his head and said, "I think this guy can be trusted." Oh. Teoti immediately became interested and looked at him. Mo Wu then continued, "This guy's behavior is not strange. If he wants to invade our Sirius, why would civilized creatures only send one person? I think this guy must have had a conflict with other civilized creatures and was forced to come here, so he helps us and helps himself. Don't say complicated civilized creatures. Even in our beast tribe, there are many guys who have surrendered to civilized creatures, right? So, I think he can be trusted." Mo Wu continued. Teoti listened and fell into deep thought. He didn't speak for a long time. His eyes moved back and forth, and he was already thinking about something. Fei Bat noticed Teoti's expression and immediately snorted, glaring at Mo Wu, and said, "Have you forgotten the wars we have fought with civilized creatures? If you trust him now, he will harm us all sooner or later." Mo Wu looked back at him, and just as he was about to refute, Teoti suddenly raised his hand to stop him. After taking a deep breath, Teoti said, "I think this way, the Zerg hates civilized creatures more than our beastmen. If he can bring back better negotiation results, then we will believe him. If not, then we cannot completely trust him. What do you think?" Fei Bat's expression lifted when he heard this, and he immediately replied, "Okay." Mo Wu didn't say anything else. After all, this was the boss's decision. At this moment, Li Ming, led by Zhang Wu and Yuan, had already flown over the sea and entered a black continent. This is the other half of Sirius's continent, which is dark black in color, without much vegetation, and most of the terrain is yellow sand and mountains, bare. This kind of place always gives people a gloomy feeling. Sometimes there is a strong wind blowing. Across the sea is a desert. Yuan seems to be very familiar with this place. He has been leading the fast flight, and Li Ming and Zhang Wu are close behind. Across the desert is a mountain range. As soon as they enter the mountain range, a rock-like object on the ground suddenly moves. Li Ming's keen consciousness is the first to notice it. He immediately paused and looked down. Zhang Wu paused and stopped, looking down along Li Ming's line of sight. The black object suddenly jumped, and the originally hard surface suddenly spread out and turned into tight wings and flew into the air. Yuan, who was in the front, paused and looked over. At this time, the flying object was clearly visible. It was 3 or 4 meters long and wide, pure black in appearance, like a rock, with a small head. It was a beetle of unknown origin. As soon as it flew into the air, the beetle's eyes immediately noticed Li Ming. Its eyes changed, and it turned its head and looked at Yuan angrily, saying, "How can there be civilized creatures? What do you mean by this?" Yuan looked back at Li Ming, smiled faintly, and said, "This is the latest military advisor of our beast tribe." The beetle immediately opened its mouth, revealing sharp teeth, looked at Yuan fiercely, and said angrily, "Are you beast tribe crazy? Can this civilized creature be believed?" Yuan immediately replied, "This is the decision of our Lord Teoti. You should take us to see Lord Wandering as soon as possible." The beetle looked unhappy, and after glancing at Li Ming again, he said, "Yuan, don't say I didn't remind you. With Lord Wandering's temper, this guy may not leave here alive." After saying this, the beetle snorted coldly and took the lead to fly away. Yuan looked back at Li Ming. Li Ming's expression was calm, without a trace of fear, and then he moved and followed the beetle. Led by beetle, several people came to a mountain. At the bottom of the mountain was a black cave. There was no portal here. They continued to follow beetle to the depths of the cave. The winding cave was like a mountain road, but it led to the underground. As they went deeper along the mountain road, there were more passages, like a maze, leading in all directions. After passing through the intricate passages, they came to an exit. This exit was more than 10 meters long and wide. For the Zerg, it might be just a small opening among many entrances and exits. Standing in front of the exit, Li Ming paused. At this time, it was like standing on the edge of a cliff. In front of him was a huge underground world. Below the exit was the ground of the entire underground space. There were densely packed crawling alien insects everywhere, which made people shudder after seeing it. There were also black alien insects flying in the air from time to time. As for the top, there were also many alien insects crawling. In short, it was like coming to a Zerg world. If it were normal, Li Ming would never stay in such a place for a moment. Not only were there those alien insects that made people's scalps numb, but there were also strange and disgusting smells. The beetle moved and flew away first, followed by Li Ming and the two beasts. Flying among the Zerg, Li Ming's appearance undoubtedly attracted too much attention. The Zerg were not beasts and could not maintain too much rationality. Some of them sprayed venom at Li Ming, some waved their claws at Li Ming, but most of them made harsh roars at Li Ming. The sprayed venom was like spitting and would not really touch Li Ming. As for waving claws and roaring, Li Ming directly blocked them and did not care at all. But Li Ming could clearly sense that the Zerg's hatred for civilized creatures was far greater than that of the beasts. After flying over this area and reaching deeper, several separate passages appeared in front of them. These passages were of different sizes, the largest of which was 100 meters high. The beetle took Li Ming to a smaller cave entrance, paused, and then stopped. The beetle turned back coldly and said, "This guy can go in alone." After saying this, Chang Wu suddenly stepped forward and said, "No, I have to accompany him." Li Ming waved his hand, smiled slightly, and replied, "I'm enough alone. Negotiations don't require too many people." As he spoke, Li Ming's figure slowly floated into the cave entrance. Going deeper along the passage, he soon came to a cave with a faint light. The cave was not big, more than 10 meters long and wide. In the middle of the cave, a long and colorful insect was coiled. In addition, it was shaped like a snake, and its bright appearance was very strange. The most important thing was that it had two heads, which was Fang Huang. As soon as he saw the other party, Li Ming stopped first, and Fang Huang also looked at Li Ming coldly. "I'm the military advisor of the Beast Tribe. This time I came here for..." Before Li Ming finished speaking, one of the heads of Fang Huang suddenly opened his mouth and a cloud of purple smoke spewed out. The smoke rushed straight to Li Ming, but Li Ming was not panicked. A golden light flashed on his body, and a golden shield appeared. The purple smoke completely enveloped Li Ming. Under the protection of the golden magic shield, the purple smoke could not get close to Li Ming. However, after a few seconds, Li Ming's narrowed eyes found something unusual. The purple smoke was actually corroding the golden light bit by bit. Li Ming did not move. Although the purple smoke had a corrosive effect, it was relatively slow. Li Ming's energy could quickly repair the golden light. When the purple smoke was exhausted, Li Ming's golden light was still safe and sound. At this time, the two heads of the Wandering looked at Li Ming at the same time and said, "I will not negotiate with civilized creatures. If it weren't for the face of the Teoti, I would kill you immediately. If you want to negotiate, let the Teoti come in person. I have no interest in other people, and other people are not qualified to talk to me," said the Wandering coldly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 547 Negotiation Qualification. Li Ming frowned, and his face changed slightly. With a light hum, Li Ming walked towards Pang Huang. This action surprised Pang Huang, and he asked in confusion, "Huh?" Li Ming stopped when he was only a few meters away from Pang Huang. He squatted and gently patted the ground with his right hand. A black substance flowed out from under Li Ming's palm, and then quickly spread around, just like black blood, covering the surroundings bit by bit. This black substance was the microworm. In just a moment, the entire cave floor was covered with microworms, and Pang Huang was also wrapped in microworms. When Pang Huang saw the microworms, he recognized them at a glance and his face suddenly changed. The two heads kept looking around, with a look of horror on their faces and their eyes wide open. This is a microworm? Pang Huang seemed to be extremely afraid of this thing. Even though he was a second level Zerg, he could only avoid the microworms. The open space around the body was completely covered by microworms. The snake-like body kept curling up, fearing that the microworms would get close to it. After the microworms covered the ground, they began to climb up along the wall of the cave, but they stopped after climbing only 1 meter. At this time, Li Ming put away his hands and slowly stood up. "Am I qualified to negotiate with you now?" Li Ming said quietly. Fang Huang was angry, gritting his teeth. His eyes were full of disbelief, and his two heads kept looking around. It is impossible for civilized creatures to control microworms. What's wrong with this guy? Four eyes looked at Li Ming and said secretly in their hearts, revealing a sharp tooth in their slightly opened mouth. As a high-level Zerg, Fang Huang knew very well that, although civilized creatures had the ability to control beasts and Zerg biological civilization, there were only specific beasts and insects. Most wild beasts and Zerg were difficult to control, especially microworms, which spent their entire lives devouring and reproducing. They were an invincible but self-destructing species. Microworms need to constantly acquire energy to replicate and reproduce, and the way to acquire energy is to devour. Wherever there is energy, they devour it, but if the energy is exhausted, the microworms will devour their own kind. When there are microworms on a planet, the microworms will continue to devour the energy of the planet and then reproduce, but when the energy of the planet is exhausted, the microworms will kill each other until the race is extinct. This is why microworms are a species that seems invincible, but can survive on its own. It is inevitable that civilized creatures cannot tame them. Taming a species is to constantly feed some energy containing one's own consciousness, and then eventually control it, just like Li Ming fed the beast soul pill to Walkamure before. But microworms are different. During the feeding process, microworms have already begun to replicate and reproduce. In other words, the initial microworms have not been controlled by consciousness, and the newly reproduced ones have already been born, so the newly born ones will not be controlled by consciousness. And if this is repeated, not only will the microworms not be controlled, but an extremely terrifying thing will be cultivated. The final result is that the microworms cannot be controlled, but are devoured by them. The reason why Li Ming was able to control the microworms was because of the ability of Shanhei Hingayan Shang. There was an independent Zerg space inside Hingayan Shang, which would continuously provide energy, and the energy provided also contained Li Ming's consciousness. In this way, whether it was newly bred microworms or already controlled microworms, they would continue to be under Li Ming's control. This was the power of Hingayan Shang. At this moment, Wan looked at the microworms in front of him. In his limited cognition, it could only be the microworms that controlled Li Ming, not Li Ming. Since they are all Zerg, then it's easy to say. The panicked Wan quickly slowed down his tone and said softly. Li Ming's expression tightened. Hearing this, he felt strange, but he didn't need to care about it at the moment. After a slight smile, he said, "Since we can talk, I will tell you in detail about the details of this war." As he spoke, the black microworms on the ground began to return to Hingayan Shang along Li Ming's feet little by little, just like the water that was poured out was collected again. At this time, Feng Huang looked around seriously. Those black microworms re-entered Li Ming's body little by little, which made Feng Huang's view of Li Ming change greatly. From the other party's expression, Li Ming also saw the light of the success of this negotiation, and then began to explain his purpose one by one. Li Ming was talking inside, and Yuan and Chang Wu outside the cave entrance looked anxious, because Li Ming had been in for a long time, and the two beasts were also worried that something might happen to Li Ming. Looking at the anxious and worried expressions of the two beasts, the beetle laughed strangely and said, "Don't worry, maybe Li Ming is having a good negotiation." The words were full of sarcasm, and Chang Wu's expression became solemn, and his eyes turned to look at Yuan. Yuan blinked his eyes and said, "Even if it is a civilized creature, it is the military advisor of Lord Teoti. If Fang Huang doesn't want to stir up trouble between the beasts and insects, he shouldn't do anything reckless." Yuan seemed to be reminding the other party, but the beetle didn't care. Instead, he smiled strangely and replied, "That's not necessarily true." As the two beasts and the insect were talking, a figure walked out of the cave. It was Li Ming. Li Ming's sudden appearance startled the three guys, but seeing Li Ming's smile, it seemed that the negotiation was very effective. Even the beetle looked at Li Ming with a surprised look. As soon as Li Ming walked out of the cave, Fang Huang followed closely behind him, and even followed him out. "I'm very satisfied with your plan. Go back and tell Teoti that I will definitely deliver what you want on time." Fang Huang also smiled with satisfaction. Upon hearing this, Li Ming immediately replied, "Then I'll have to trouble Lord Fang Huang. In that case, we'll go back and wait." Fang Huang nodded slightly, then glared at the beetle and said, "Go, escort the military advisor away." The beetle was stunned, looked at Li Ming, then at Fang Huang, and finally replied at a loss, "Yes." The beetle flew out with a puzzled expression, and Li Ming and the two beasts followed closely behind. The two beasts couldn't understand the scene just now. When the blood coagulation beast was still there, every negotiation was humble and submissive. How could there be such an aura as Li Ming, who even sent Fang Huang off in person? The two beasts couldn't understand it in their hearts, and didn't dare to ask more. The two beasts looked at each other, and could only secretly admire the strength of this military advisor. Leaving the underground Zerg world, and returning to the sky above the dark desert, Li Ming and the two beasts flew directly to the Beast Clan continent. At this time, Li Ming was still thinking about the content of the previous negotiation. According to Li Ming's request, all the Zerg's dirty shadow insects were handed over to the Beast Clan for use. Now the cultivation period of the shadow worms has not yet been completed, and there are only 12 of them, but Fang Huang still agreed to Li Ming's request, mainly because the benefits provided by Li Ming are very considerable. The time for the Beastmen and the Zerg to attack the civilized biological world is when the shadow worms grow and mature, and that is also the time for the civilized world to attack the Zerg core. Simply put, the second level civilizations of the 5 major galaxies will join forces to sneak into Sirius and launch an attack on Sirius under the cover of spacecraft. It is naturally impossible to destroy Sirius, but the purpose of this action is to weaken the Zerg core, so that the number of shadow worms used by the Zerg will be reduced, and the Zerg's subsequent attack will be much weaker. It is precisely because of this that Li Ming's plan is to stagger this opportunity and launch an attack without waiting for the 5 major galaxies to come over to weaken it. Such a surprise attack will have a better effect. Of course, this is only the first step of the plan. If you want to implement it perfectly, Li Ming has more important things to do. Back to the Beastman's territory, in the underground cave, Li Ming brought Yuan and Chan Wu to the front of Teoti, and at this time the other 3 second level magic beasts were also present. Li Ming told all the results of the negotiation. Teoti's face changed, and he said in surprise, "The Zerg agreed to lend us all the filthy shadow bugs." Li Ming replied, "That's right." Teoti then looked puzzled and continued, "The Zerg gave all the filthy shadow bugs to us. Won't they participate in the attack?" Li Ming smiled when he heard this. What Teoti asked was exactly what Li Ming wanted to say. Chapter 548 Old Friend. Before, our cooperation with the Zerg was to share the profits with the Zerg and use them to borrow the shadow worms. Now, I will change the way to use all the shadow worms by ourselves, and we will conduct the attack. The profits will still go to the other party, but the profits will be much higher than before. Li Ming continued. According to the previous war profits, not only was the loss of the race huge, but the profits were also very weak. However, after the Battle of the Supply Star, Teoti's view of Li Ming changed. Teoti was quite satisfied with Li Ming's new plan. He rolled his eyes slightly and said, "How sure are you?" Li Ming's mouth corners slightly raised, and he replied, 8 points, or 10 points. Teoti frowned, and did not say anything immediately, but looked at the other level 2 monsters. At this time, Emma Wu's eyes turned, and he stood up first and said, "How do you say 8 points, and how do you say 10 points? Li Ming turned his eyes, and looked at Emma Wu. He hesitated for a moment and said, "According to my plan, we need to prioritize the target, and then I will lead 2 people to sneak into the headquarters, destroy the headquarters defense system, and finally let the shadow insects enter." Without their defense system counterattack, we will reduce casualties and gain greater benefits. To achieve the effect of 10 points, then, I need the help of my 5 pet beasts. If you can return them to me, you can achieve 10 points. Li Ming continued. This is the time for Li Ming to make a request. If the other party does not agree, then Li Ming will continue to make this request after the war. Of course, it is not ruled out that the other party will use this to threaten him, but Li Ming also has a countermeasure. But if the other party agrees, then Li Ming can reunite with his 5 pet beasts. Li Ming designed such a huge offensive plan, which is not just as simple as helping the beastmen rescue the 5 beasts. The flow of the Boral's galaxy has been obtained, and Li Ming's target is the next large galaxy. According to the second level civilization inheritance rules of the Virgo galaxy cluster, there should be Liahan in the large galaxies, but they will not be used easily, but will be used for the next successor. Therefore, Li Ming can completely use the power of the beast tribe to find an opportunity to explore the whereabouts of Liahan. Teoti looked at Li Ming with a hesitant expression, but soon opened his mouth and laughed loudly, and the sound echoed in the entire cave. After laughing, Teoti stared at Li Ming and said, since we are very sure, we naturally still have to pursue very sure. So from now on, all 5 of you will obey the orders of the military advisor. I'm full of expectations for this operation. Li Ming paused after hearing this, and even doubted whether he had heard it wrong, but his expression did not change much. The 5 second level monsters were also shocked when they heard this order. Some of them were unwilling in their hearts, and some seemed very normal, but no matter how these 5 guys were in their hearts, they had to obey Teoti's orders at this moment. And Li Ming also successfully became the second in command of the Sirius Beast tribe. In the dark passage, Lei Yi was in front and Li Ming was behind. There was only a faint light in the passage that was more than 30 meters high. Lei Yi's huge figure made the sound of every footstep echo in the cave. At the end of the passage, a metal fence blocked the way. There was a faint light inside. 5 pet beasts were all locked in a small metal cage. The metal cage was rough, but Li Ming could see at a glance that the material of the metal cage was made of energy suppressing objects, and the pets inside could not use their abilities at all. Obviously, the beast tribe knew very well which things were harmful to themselves, and which were beneficial to themselves. This metal cage was a good example. The appearance of Li Ming and Lei Yi immediately attracted the attention of the 5 pet beasts. At this time, the 5 guys looked exhausted and looked at Li Ming with an apologetic look. Lei Yi raised his front paw and pointed it at the fence. Just like a key opening a lock, the fence opened with a squeak. Lei Yi did not go in, but just stood aside and looked at Li Ming. Li Ming's face was calm. He glanced at the other party and whispered, "You go back first." Lei Yi still didn't speak and turned away. Li Ming then entered the cave, glanced around, raised his right hand and waved it, and saw white light flashing, and those rough metal cages broke with a snap. "Thank you for your hard work. Now, you can have a good rest." As he said this, Li Ming waved his right hand again, and the cloak behind him shook, and the 5 listless guys turned into beams of light and entered the cloak. Whether it was the calm walker or the naughty Moor, they didn't have much energy in their bodies at this time. At this time, they entered in Shang just to have a good rest and recover their bodies. After doing this, Li Ming turned around and left. As a military advisor, Li Ming had his own independent cave, like an independent room. At this time, Li Ming already had some prestige among the beasts. Although it was not enough for all the beasts to follow his lead, it was also another large part of the beasts who obeyed his orders. In order to establish greater prestige, this war was of great significance to Li Ming. Sitting in his own cave, Li Ming closed his eyes and concentrated. He already had an attack plan. What he needed now were the remaining details. Moreover, the Zerg's shadow worms had not been provided yet, so Li Ming had to prepare carefully. After all, this was Li Ming's first time commanding a galaxy war. Although it was a war between the orcs and civilized creatures, the interests involved were very huge. The more he thought about the details, the more confused he became. After all, Li Ming had no experience in this area, and he naturally did not have the talent of a commander. Just thinking about it made him feel a mess, which made Li Ming feel a little uneasy in the cave. He slowly opened his eyes and paced back and forth in the cave. As he was thinking, Li Ming sighed slightly. There was still some time before the plan started. He was so nervous that it would not produce any results. It would be better to relax. Taking a deep breath, Li Ming's eyebrows tightened slightly, as if he suddenly thought of something. He turned his right hand over and exerted a little force on his palm. A ball of blue light formed in his palm. He raised his hand and pointed it at a point in the air, and the blue light shot out. A muffled sound of hum was heard, and a palace appeared in the air. This palace was the time-space castle, which originally belonged to Lan Jingzhang, but later Lan Jingzhang gave himself the control of the castle, so that Li Ming also had the ability to enter and exit the castle at any time. Lan Jingzhang and Li Ming still had some friendship. If it wasn't for Li Ming's action, Lan Jingzhang would not have been able to successfully rescue Tanjing. Moreover, Lan Jingzhang had the potential and ultimate ability, so Li Ming still had to ask him for advice. Instead of thinking about the fruitless battle of the beast tribe, it would be better to see if he could meet this old friend, reminisce about the past, and relax. Thinking of this, Li Ming moved and flew into the castle. With a flash of light, Li Ming's figure had appeared in an independent space. The first thing that came into view was the living room, and looking up was the second floor, which was the same as the last time he saw it, without any changes. But this time there was no one inside. Li Ming shook his head slightly inside. The space-time castle can be provided to multiple owners at the same time. As long as you master the ability and method to open it, you can release the castle. Even if Li Ming is in the Virgo galaxy cluster and Lan Jingzhang is in the local galaxy cluster, as long as the two use it, they can enter at the same time and meet each other inside. However, the two of them only entered a space together. Although they can meet, they cannot reach each other's position and location. Li Ming came to the table in the living room and sat down. He wanted to meet an old friend, but he didn't expect that he thought too much. But then again, even if you have a space-time castle, no one will come in easily. Most people will choose to enter this space at special moments, so the chance of meeting by coincidence is still too small. After just sitting there for a while, Li Ming was ready to get up and leave, but just when Li Ming just got up and was about to leave, a light sound suddenly came from behind him, and that sound was like stepping on the floor barefoot. If it were an ordinary person, he would naturally not be able to hear it, but Li Ming's keen consciousness and mental power would detect the slightest movement, and his body paused and then turned around. I saw a person walking down the stairs on the second floor. Chapter 549. Prepare for action. Snow White bare feet stepped on the steps. It was the sound that Li Ming heard. The short animal skin skirt showed long legs as she walked down the stairs. Li Ming raised his eyes and saw that the person coming down was Tanjing. Li Ming was shocked at first, but he couldn't help frowning when he looked at Tanjing's expression. Tanjing only went down a few steps and stopped. She looked at Li Ming quietly, and she was also stunned. The two of them did not move and looked at each other. After a few seconds of pause, Li Ming asked first, "Why don't you see Lan Jingzhang?" Tanjing stood there motionless. Under her melancholy face, she seemed to have encountered some difficulties. She only looked at Li Ming quietly and didn't say a word. Li Ming sighed slightly and then narrowed his eyes slightly. The ability of Wisdom Eyes has been activated. Tanjing has only reached the second section. Since the other party didn't say anything, Li Ming had to use Wisdom Eyes to check her inner thoughts. After a quick look, Li Ming's face instantly turned ugly, and even the muscles on his face couldn't help but tremble twice. Centaurus Galaxy Cluster. Orc Civilization. The terrifying information that Li Ming saw from Tanjing's mind made Li Ming whisper. Although Li Ming's voice was very low, Tanjing seemed to have heard something. Suddenly, he looked up at Li Ming with a slightly panicked look in his eyes and said, You know. Li Ming shook his head slightly and replied, "I just saw some from your consciousness, but I actually know nothing about those." Hearing this, Tanjing frowned slightly, and the bandage on his forehead loosened. As if realizing something, Tanjing immediately raised his hands and fixed the bandage on his forehead again. Li Ming naturally noticed this detail, but he didn't care. After obtaining the information in Tanjing's mind and knowing his inner thoughts, Li Ming looked at the other party and showed helplessness towards him. At this time, Tanjing suddenly continued to step down, and the light footsteps made a shallow sound on the ground, and the footsteps did not stop until they reached the living room on the first floor. Tanjing came to Li Ming's front, looking at him quietly, and then suddenly leaned forward to get close to him. Li Ming was startled and at a loss. A breath of air reached his face, followed by a light touch, as if a finger gently touched his face. After this action, Tanjing turned and left. But Li Ming saw what she was thinking. This sudden kiss on the cheek was just because Li Ming helped her to avenge her, and now, this woman full of hatred has begun to continue her terrifying road of revenge. But the kiss just now did make Li Ming's heart beat faster and his emotions fluctuated violently. He turned his head and looked at Tanjing's back. Can't you give up? He wants you to live well, not to die like this. Li Ming's heart was fluctuating, and he suddenly felt a little reluctant, and couldn't help but say. Tanjing, who was about to leave the time and space castle, suddenly paused and stopped where he was. Li Ming also continued, stay here, at least it's safe. Tanjing did not look back, but continued to walk, but said, maybe this is my destiny. The voice entered his ears, and the figure had disappeared, returning from the time-space castle to the real world where he was. Li Ming stayed where he was, and at this moment, his mind could not help but recall the information he had just seen. This galaxy group was plundered by the Orc civilization, which came from the Centaur galaxy cluster. During this plunder, Lang Jingzhang died in order to protect Tanjing, but Tanjing actually wanted to avenge him. At present, Li Ming only has this information, and the details of Kato are still unknown, but there is one thing that Li Ming is clear about, that is, the Orc civilization is extremely powerful and exists beyond Li Ming's cognition. Li Ming was originally upset because of the battle plan, but he did not expect to encounter such a headache. After entering the time-space castle, Li Ming has always had some admiration for Tanjing, but this girl who just came out of one revenge abyss and entered another revenge abyss had to make Li Ming temporarily give up some of his thoughts about her. In the civilized world, the more advanced the civilization, the more decisive the assessment of the pros and cons of things. Li Ming's civilization background and Li Ming's advanced growth are telling Li Ming that he needs to be busy with his own things. Thinking of this, Li Ming closed his eyes slightly, turned around and left the time and space castle, and returned to the flashing. Everything was calm as before, without too many changes, but Li Ming was a little anxious at this time. After pacing back and forth in the cave, and thinking for a while, Li Ming turned and walked out. Although there is no very detailed plan, the plan he made before can continue to be implemented. After all, the plan is for Teoti to hear, and the details need to be flexible. Moreover, Li Ming has rescued 5 pet beasts, so Li Ming's mind still has to be on finding Liu. Standing in the cave, Li Ming flipped his right hand, and a green light appeared in his hand. Then he waved it outside the cave, and the green light shot out, and disappeared in a flash. Li Ming just sat cross-legged in the cave and waited. A moment later, 5 figures came out of the dark passage little by little. They were the 5 level 2 monsters. After the 5 guys appeared completely, Li Ming stood up, glanced at them, and said, the battle plan, start now. The 5 monsters were startled. The sudden order startled the 5 monsters. Among them, Fenifu said, didn't you say that you should wait for the Zerg's shadow worm? Why are you leaving so soon? Li Ming ignored the other party and continued, I will arrange the shadow worm separately. Now I need a few helpers to work with me on the infiltration plan. In order to ensure that the shadow worm can enter the battlefield smoothly, we must first infiltrate the enemy. Li Ming continued. As he said this, Li Ming came close to the 5 monsters, and while looking at them, he continued, Master Teoti has given me full command of this war. You won't have any objections to me, right? The 5 monsters paused after hearing this. After all, these 5 guys were there when Teoti issued the order. At this moment, Li Ming reminded them again, so they naturally didn't dare to say anything more. After confirming that the 5 people in front of him had no objections, Li Ming continued, then I will talk about the details of this mission. The target we are going to attack this time is Keen Star. It is the headquarters of the Anslo Galaxy. The Anslo Galaxy is one of the 5 major star systems in Virgo, and is the closest to us. Fei Fu and Yuan will sneak in with me. Emma Wu will go to the Zerg to urge the handover of the shadow bugs. Lei Yi and Chan Wu will be responsible for assembling the monster troops. After the arrangements were made, Li Ming shook the cloak behind him, and Walker's figure emerged. Turning his head to look at Walker, Li Ming continued, after the Warcraft troops are assembled, Chan Wu and Lei Yi will set out under its leadership. I will tell you the detailed coordinates through Walker. After saying this, Li Ming added again, do you have any objections? The 5 Warcrafts paused and said nothing. Although Li Ming's command ability was temporarily exerted, his words and deeds were more accurate than the previous coagulation beasts. After all, the previous attacks were all joint efforts of the beasts and the insects, and they were forced invasions. The targets of the attacks were also random planets. This kind of unsystematic war is naturally destructive to low-level civilizations, just like humans suddenly encountering an attack by unfamiliar species, which is almost irresistible. But advanced civilizations are different. Advanced weapons and equipment are enough to cope with various changes. Although the 5 guys don't quite understand the places and areas that Li Ming mentioned, they are clear about one thing. The target of this attack is the headquarters of civilized creatures, which must have more resources. Okay, let's go. Li Ming shouted loudly. At this command, 3 of the beasts turned around and left quickly, leaving only Yuan and Fei Fu. The reason why these 2 beasts were chosen to accompany the infiltration was because among the 5 level 2 magic beasts, these 2 guys were the strongest ones that Li Ming sensed. Turning around and looking at Walker beside him, Li Ming smiled slightly. After a short recovery in Hingai Shang, Walker was already in good spirits. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with the other party's body, Li Ming said, then I'll leave this to you, Walker. Walker looked serious and whispered, don't worry, Master. Chapter 550, Infiltration. On the top of a mountain, Li Ming, Yuan and Fei Fu stood quietly. Li Ming flipped his right hand and a capsule appeared in his hand. Then he raised his hand and threw it. There was a muffled sound of bang, followed by a flash of blue light, and the metal capsule disappeared, replaced by a medium-sized spaceship. The capsules of advanced civilizations are indeed different. The size of the spaceship is so large. Looking at the spaceship in front of him, Li Ming showed satisfaction and whispered, let's go. The high-tech beasts of the spaceship naturally had no experience. Yuan and Fei Fu were also stunned for a while, but now they could only follow Li Ming's footsteps and enter the spaceship together. In the main cabin of the spaceship, Li Ming stood on the operating table and imported the information of the space map. The blue light flashed alternately, and the calm operating table continued to emit light, and then various information began to appear. The capsule spaceship was like a spaceship that had just been produced. The system was blank. Only the information imported into the space map could be transmitted and flown, and the capsule spaceship also had many weaknesses. There was no strong energy shield, and the attack weapon was single. The only advantage was convenience. Yuan and Fei Fu looked around the main cabin with curiosity, while Li Ming had quietly designed a route. It was naturally safer to enter the Anslo galaxy by spaceship, because this operation was a secret operation, and Li Ming had to be fully prepared. It was still a long way to reach the Anslo galaxy, and the distance to Keen was even farther. During this long time, Li Ming could only wait quietly and close his eyes to rest. However, at this moment, a small spaceship was also quietly entering the Anslo galaxy. The appearance of this spaceship was quite special. The surface was grayish yellow, like an antique that had been covered in dust for many years, and there were many strips on the surface of the spaceship, as if the spaceship was covered with cloth strips. In the main cabin of the spaceship, an alien was looking at the operating table in front of him. The operating table was also completely different from ordinary spaceships. It was like a spherical brain, with red light flashing on the surface, and no information could be seen, as if all information could only be sensed by consciousness. As for this alien, he was also different. His upper body was humanoid, his lower body was a snake tail, his head was long and loose, and his skin was dark. He stared at the operating table with a slight smile, and said to himself, Virgo Galaxy Cluster? What kind of precious source body will there be? Hehe. As he spoke, a sinister smile emerged from his face. Compared with the road to the Anslo galaxy, a fierce meeting is taking place on a black planet. The surface of this black planet is full of buildings, but these buildings are relatively old. This is the headquarters of the Earth Bath Organization. On the roof of a huge building, 4 aliens are staying on the roof in different postures. Noir is floating in the air. Cannonbone is half sitting on the edge of the building, with one leg drooping outside the building, as if he will fall off at any time. And Run Yu Lang is quietly on the roof with a serious face. In addition to these 3 people, there was another alien leaning against the pillar on the roof without moving. This alien was extremely strong, and the armor on his body could not cover his protruding muscles. There were 2 curved horns on both sides of his head, like a pair of scimitars, and a black battle axe was hung on his waist. This person was a member of the Earth Bath Organization, Nguyen. Cannonbone, who was sitting on the edge of the building, looked into the distance with a complicated expression and said, "You should all know that our galaxy group was invaded by the Orc civilization. According to the development of this civilization, their next target may be the Virgo galaxy cluster." Cannonbone continued. The other 3 were startled by these words. Nguyen, who was leaning against the stone pillar, stood up straight, looked at Cannonbone, and said, "The Orc civilization has reached this point. Doesn't Small Sky District intend to intervene?" Cannonbone turned his eyes behind him, without moving his head, and continued, "Sky District? They can't take care of this place now. If the Orc civilization really invades the Virgo galaxy cluster, then we can only find a way to solve it ourselves. There have been heavy losses in this galaxy group, and the original order has been disrupted. Now the Cheyenne Mu organization is rebuilding. If you don't want that, you'd better be fully prepared." Cannonbone continued. The tone of these words fully revealed Cannonbone's worries. Noir also frowned when she heard this, as if she was extremely afraid of this Orc civilization. After thinking for a while, he said, "Let's put aside all the current goals of the Earth Bath Organization and concentrate on searching for information about the Orcs. We must determine whether they will attack the Virgo galaxy cluster. We don't want the same mistake that happened to our own galaxy group to happen again." Run Yu Lang said with a serious face, "Understood. In the starry universe, besides the bright stars, there are dark areas. Some of these bright sources are stars, some are other energy planets, and some are just reflections. Any object in the universe seems so small and insignificant." At this time, the capsule spacecraft that Li Ming was riding had entered the Ansler galaxy, but Li Ming did not go directly to Keen Star. In order to sneak in more successfully and safely, Li Ming's spacecraft stopped at a cruise bay. It was quite good to anchor the spaceship at the cruise bay. Li Ming looked back at Yuan and Fei Fu and said, "You two wait here, I'll be back soon." Fei Fu and Yuan looked at each other, but finally acquiesced. Yuan trusted Li Ming a little, so he didn't worry too much, but Fei Fu was extremely distrustful of Li Ming, but at the moment he had no more choices. Li Ming's figure flashed and disappeared in the blue portal, entering the cruise bay. This stop was not for trading or buying anything. Li Ming just wanted to get more information. After a while, the blue light in the main cabin flashed again, and Li Ming had returned. Without saying a word, he restarted the spaceship and left. The 2 beasts looked at Li Ming's operation with a puzzled look on their faces. They had limited knowledge of civilized creatures, so they didn't quite understand what Li Ming did. As the spaceship continued to transmit, Keenstar had entered the display range of the console. Li Ming turned his head and looked at the 2 beasts behind him solemnly, saying, "After arriving at Keenstar, I will find a hidden place to hide you two." As he spoke, he flipped his right hand, and a metal ball appeared in his palm. Then he threw it to Yuank. Yuank didn't know what the object was, but he caught it in one hand and looked at the metal ball with a puzzled look. Li Ming continued, "This thing will always show my position. Once it lights up its red light, you two must immediately come to my side according to my position on it. Do you understand?" Yuan was still confused. He glanced at Fei Bad beside him, hesitated for a moment, and replied, "Okay." Li Ming was satisfied when he heard this. After several transmissions, the capsule spacecraft had entered the space of Keenstar, and the identity verification information from the ground of Keenstar was sent over. Li Ming raised his hand and responded on the operating table. Through the information obtained by the smart eye in the patrol bay, Li Ming had a preliminary understanding of Keenstar. Keenstar is not only the headquarters of the Ansler Galaxy, but also a trade center, and Li Ming used the excuse of trade to reply. All civilizations in the Ansler Galaxy come here to trade and exchange, and achieve mutual progress and development through each other's civilization and technology. After the information is confirmed, Li Ming's spaceship will be controlled by the ground group of Keenstar, and then enter the designated parking point of Keenstar according to the opponent's trajectory. Of course, this information alone is not enough. As the spaceship is controlled by the ground, Li Ming slowly turns around and looks at the two beasts. His body begins to twist and deform, and in the blink of an eye, he turns into a strange alien. It is easier to hide himself by transforming into the appearance of an alien in the Ansler Galaxy. Seeing Li Ming turn into other aliens, Yuan and Fei Fu were stunned and showed incredible expressions. Li Ming still looked calm and said, "You two should go to the auxiliary cabin to hide first." Yuan and Fei Fu still didn't understand, but after hearing this order, they could only turn around helplessly and walk towards the portal. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.